welcome. It's nice to see you all here this evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board. Glad you could make it, Clark. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's see, whose turn is it? Lily? You can lead it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you should all have received a copy of the agenda. Any questions, concerns about the agenda? Could I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I move that we approve the agenda for the board meeting of September 7th.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda for the board meeting of September 7th. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Likewise, you should have received the minutes. Please let me know if there were any questions, corrections, additions to the minutes. Hearing none, could I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll motion to approve the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of August 3rd, 2021 as presented.
Okay, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of August 3rd, 2021 as presented. Yeah.
We need to add the retreat also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we also have the minutes from the retreat. Could I get a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes from the working session and governing board retreat of August 27th, 2021 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from the working session governing board retreat of August 27th, 2021 as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Did I not vote on the last one?
No,
I
I
don't
think you
know.
could have done them separately or as one,
Yeah.
so it's fine either way.
They were listed as two. We were
Yes.
just reading.
Yeah.
I think it's fine either way.
Okay, we have several presentations tonight. The first one is from Mile High Middle School, and Andy is
Mr.
here
Binder.
to share with us.
Good evening, everybody. So thank you for letting me talk a little bit about Mile High. I always love getting to talk about my students and staff over at Mile High. So I'm going to begin, though, with letting, I don't know, I just see one of my parents here tonight. We have Miss Jennifer Whittamore here. Her daughter is a 7th grader at our school, and actually she has we were just talking, we've 6, right? 6 other children come through Mile High over the years, and so I thought she definitely would be able to give a good perspective about that. And if she joins us, Mrs. Wanda Moore also will be joining us, who has an 8th grader at our school. So I'll let Miss Whitmore come on up first.
Hello. As Andy said, I'm Jennifer Whittamore. This is my 6th kid, actually 6th kid through Mile High. I have 7 girls total, but my 6th kid through Mile High. Mr. Howard there was the president when the first one went through, and Mr. Binder was the English teacher. So lots of experience and lots of time there. So basically what I just wanted to say is middle school can be tough. We were just talking about some girl drama going on at middle school, but I've just really been impressed with Mile High. I just think the teachers there are really great. The band program is amazing. Mr. James at the band program. I had a daughter through band now doing marching band at the high school. And I've really appreciated Mile High. My one daughter did cheerleader for 2 years, and I love that they didn't cut. Like, she had no cheerleader experience, but she still got to play. Her and her sister also tried out for volleyball. They did get cut, but they had never played before. But I do like that there are some programs where the kids don't get cut. Another one did art class with Mr. Uftring after school. Loved it. So my kids have had a really good experience there. The only thing I would be concerned about is I saw in 6th grade this different train. My girls took, I have what we call virtual twins. They're born 3 weeks apart, where they're adopted, but they're twins in a way. But in 6th grade, they took this train where one went the honors track and one went the regular track. And my honors kid has been challenged and always had work to do, even in the midst of the pandemic and when we did school at home. Now, my current 7th grader and my other twin are regular kids, and what I see is they don't get challenged. Their teachers don't expect as much of them. Doesn't really expect anything of them at some points. I had to pretty much homeschool on top of doing virtual school with them because they would be done. I would get them up. I'm very consistent and very programmed, but I would get them up at 8 o'clock to start school, and by 9:30 they were like, we have nothing else to do. And I'm like, shoot, well, let me come up with some stuff for you to do. And I did reach out to the principals and I did reach out to the teachers, and they gave me ideas, but I really felt like I had to do more. My high schooler now, she comes home with homework all the time. My other 2 kids never have homework. Now I will say this, my other 2 kids, they do what they have to do to get by. So they may have homework that they're just not doing, but their grades don't show it. So, I mean, that's my one concern I have with being in PUSD this long is my older girls were all like on the SMART honors track, so I had never seen that difference. But even starting over at Granite Mountain, I mean, you go in to see their presentations and the honors kids have done a huge amount and the regular kids have done a little bit of amount. And I think they need to be more challenged. I am grateful to Mile High. We were able to get my daughter, that's now at high school, an IEP. Like, it was really important for me to get that IEP for her in math before she went over to the high school. We struggled with that because of pandemic issues and the learning center teacher leaving, but we're getting through. And I'm a parent that's really involved with my kids and really involved in making sure they're getting the best that they need to get.
I really appreciate your specific indications, both things you appreciated and things that concerned you. That's very helpful.
Good.
So thank you. Other questions, comments?
Do you have any suggestions for keeping
The non-honors
grade
kids.
level kids engaged more? Or?
I just think they need to be expected to do more. I mean, and I get it, you're struggling with kids that, especially during the pandemic, that weren't doing anything. But I felt like my kids were falling into that. You don't have to do anything. You're fine. My kid in high school turns stuff in late all the time, gets full credit all the time. And I'm like, what is that teaching my kid that's working really hard to turn things in on time? So I do think at some point there has to be accountability for these kids and just more that they can be expected to do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
Thank
questions?
you
All right,
for
thank you.
being here. Really appreciate
Uh-huh.
it. Mr. Binder.
Right. Thank you again, I really appreciate that. And I think some of the feedback I heard you'll see reflected in some of the presentation I have here. Really wanted to focus on really our school goals, what that's going to look like at Mile High, and just what we're doing really to respond to a wild and crazy year last year and all the needs we have in response to that. So some of you have probably seen this before. I always like to begin with it. It is something that we present to our staff. We show our staff every staff meeting. We really want to remind them what Mile High is all about. You know, our school goals frequently change from year to year, but this is something that we've really been working on the last couple years. And I won't go over all of it, but the idea of these big 4 things are the lens we look through. This idea of we want to create a positive culture at Mile High. We want to make sure that we recognize that there's a lot of different needs and a lot of different backgrounds with kids. Getting them thinking about the future, whether that's later in the school year, in the future of what high school might look like, or beyond high school. And of course, academic achievement, making sure that we're doing everything we can to do the business of school, which is learning and achieving. So that's something that like I said, I like to start with, and I think you'll see reflected in some of our school goals. So thinking back to last spring, we didn't know what this year was going to be like, but we knew what we had just gone through, and we knew what the kids were, some of the things that they were missing. And so we met with our staff, we brainstormed a lot of different things we knew needed to happen, and came up with, well, two themes really, and that's one, we really needed to focus on student learning and not just assignment completion. One of the things that we saw happening quite a bit was even during distance learning and things, they were completing assignments, they were putting together assignments, and definitely we wanted to make sure those assignments focused on learning, and many times they did, but we want to make sure the focus was on the learning and not the completion. And then the other idea that we kept kind of talking about was we as a staff always have room to improve on how we are teaching and how we're building the culture of school. And so that's kind of going back to the big four. So you'll see in our trilateral or our school goals, these two ideas really coming through. What we saw was there was a lot of different things happening at Mile High, and certainly more than what's on this list, but what we realized was that there was not always a connection. They were not always tied together, not always under, or not always organized in a way that supported each other. And so what we tried to do is to look at all those items, put them in a way that we could organize, we could have committees looking at all the various things we're doing, but with the focus on learning again, making sure that we weren't doing things just because that's the way they have been done, but making sure that we were doing things with that purpose of student learning. We'll talk about some of these here, more specifically in just a minute. The trilateral goal, again, we wanted to make sure that, yes, it focused on student learning, but it wasn't too specific. There's certainly needs in certain areas, math, language arts, and really all the areas, but we wanted to make sure that it was not heavily focused on one department or one area, but all teachers got behind this. And so we created this goal with the idea that regardless of the subject area, there's a need to identify those gaps that may have been created last year, and all teachers can really identify areas that maybe are essential for the foundational skills of their topic. And so we use the word power standards. There's other phrases out there, but the idea that we're going to have every student, or every teacher, excuse me, identify some really key power standards or essential, we've also been calling them trilateral targets, but that we'll have revisited over and over, and you'll see that in just a minute here, where we are revisiting them. We are having the students revisit them. And then these three areas will help us get there, this idea of making sure we're increasing our instructional effectiveness, making sure that we are creating that positive culture, and growing professionally or collaboratively growing. And again, let me show you what that really looks like at Mile High. So the first one, increasing instructional effectiveness. This is something that we've been doing, of course, a long time, and we want to continue to work on. But making sure that our teachers are using CITW and all the different strategies that we know work. We are focusing again on these trilateral targets. One of the things we started this last year, early last year, realizing, okay, we know kids are missing some instructional time, so what do we need to do to adjust and adapt? And one of the things they did was we got together, we said, what are the most essential skills, and making sure that we're hitting those and revisiting those. Well, we're doing that again this year with the idea of not only making sure that those targets or standards are the most essential, or the ones that really are foundational, but also that the kids are involved in them and they're revisited. Like I said, making sure the kids are involved in that, making sure that we are taking time throughout the year to determine the assessment and see if those are actually being met. And then making sure that it's actually connected to our evaluation as well. And then of course, one way to learn how to be an effective teacher is to learn from each other. So some of these you'll see over and over throughout the goal. Positive culture, we definitely have been working hard the last couple years to build that positive culture, to use Capturing Kids' Hearts. I will be the first to admit that last year Capturing Kids' Hearts took a little bit of a hit at Mile High, just being online, and so we wanted to make sure we built that up again. So making sure we're using Capturing Kids' Hearts. Talked a lot about empowering our students. We feel like that's a way to really help them take a role in that, whether it's with Capturing Kids' Hearts or in other ways. We're having our student council develop some student ambassadors to make sure that they're getting involved and helping connect with students, maybe new students to campus. Again, providing the positive role models. I said lunch example, we have our 8th grade student council go out and help our 7th graders clean up their mess a little bit more. So it's a little more positive peer influence. Lots of positive messages around campus created from the students. Some of our students are also working with some of our special needs kids as well. Making sure our counselors are involved in the process and regularly attending our meetings so they know where the biggest needs are, and making sure that what we're doing and what the kids are doing is celebrated throughout the year. Last one here is one that I'm really excited about. It's something that I feel like has for too long gone, every teacher is growing, but not always collaboratively. And so making sure that we're prioritizing time for teachers to be working together, but also working together on professional growth, not just on planning. Making sure that there's kind of a culture of sharing with each other, making sure that they understand that we all are growing in different ways, and so that's just kind of the norm. Again, making sure that there's opportunities to get into each other's classrooms and observe each other and provide feedback on that. And of course, instructional coaches play a huge role in this. So those are kind of the big 3 areas of our trilateral. I feel like a lot of them, the key part of it, of course, is understanding those trilateral targets or those objectives. A couple other ways I wanted just to point out, we do have a homeroom class that meets every day, and we've been using that quite a bit for intervention and enrichment. We are using MobyMax, and I know that's something that is often or was used more at the elementary level, but we're using it quite a bit now because it is, if you're not familiar with MobyMax, it is an adaptive program. We are focusing heavily right now on math in homeroom, so it's identified where the kids are, it's identified areas that they specifically need to grow. So MobyMax is one that we use. It works really well in short increments of time. We're doing a lot of skill building. Again, right now, we're focusing a lot on math and language arts during this homeroom time. So we've identified some of these areas. We are having them do little activities, make it, more real world so they can apply it together. Friday assessments, intervention, and collaboration. We are trying to really emphasize that Friday time as a time to be doing these things. It doesn't look the same for every class and every subject, but the teachers are really finding it effective to have a little assessment on that Friday, and then maybe the next Friday using the assessment results to reteach certain things or to provide some enrichment in that time. And of course, Friday afternoons is really essential to get together, plan, and making sure that we are identifying what's necessary. And then this is what I was mentioning early, these foundational skills that are really, again, power standards call them, lots of different things. This is just a little snapshot of what we're asking our students to do. So the students are given these power standards. They've been put in student-friendly language. It makes it's kind of an accountability piece as well because it's right in front of them and the teachers constantly, and so the teacher or the students will be frequently revisiting this and telling us where they're at, helping them identify where they're at. And so this is just one of the ways we're kind of tracking where we're at with all of our standards. I know there was questions as well about what we're doing in terms of our transition and orientation in terms of making sure kids moving up from 6th grade and moving out to 9th grade are well taken care of. Some of the things that we're continuing, I should say, is 6th grade tour. We invite all the families for a big event, and then we also have the whole 6th grade class come in the spring. At least here's hoping we can do that this year. We also hopefully again can do something with our high school teachers to make sure that they come over to Mile High, they introduce themselves, they present some information to our 8th graders. We, of course, we've been doing this for quite a while, but allowing in certain sports 6th grade students to participate in our athletic program, which I think is a really positive way to introduce them to our school and get them happy and excited to come. The other things, though, are more structural that we've made some changes with, in terms of putting it on some teachers and some students to brainstorm ideas. We did restructure our student councils, so we have really 2 different student councils now. We have a 7th grade and an 8th grade. And we talked to them about coming up with lots of ideas on how to support each other, but also to reach out. So our 7th grade is reaching out to the 6th graders, and the 8th grade student council is going to be trying to work with the high school. Very similar life skills, same thing. We have a 7th grade life skills and an 8th grade life skills. They're going to be doing the same types of things, more on the what is necessary to survive. We kind of have joked that 7th grade life skills is how to survive middle school. And then counseling is, of course, we have 2 different counselors, one that focus on 7th grade. Instead of breaking it up by alpha order, we've broken it up by grade level for that same exact reason. So I know I talked a lot. We do have Miss Moore here, if you would like to hear a little more feedback from a parent.
Sure.
All right, and then I'll take some questions at the end. So are you up for sharing a little bit right now? So you want to come on up? This is Mrs. Wanda Moore, and she has, like I said, a 8th grader at Mile High. And yeah, just if you could share a little bit about what you've appreciated about your experience at Mile High, and also any feedback.
Okay. Hello.
Feel free to pull the mic down.
Sure did, just did. Yes, I've been a Prescott person since 2016. We moved our family up here from SoCal, like everyone, like tons of people. But we want to keep Prescott. So my first experience with Mile High was with my son Anthony, who's now a senior at PHS. And I liked how what stood out to me initially was how much support the community gave to the students for free. I couldn't believe it. I was like, you're offering tutoring? You're offering this Launchpad thing? You're offering like so many different in the food and just so much, because in Cali, it was like, you give me the money, show me, I'll support your kid, pay me. Absolutely, depending on, if you got Title I funds and all that kind of stuff, because I used to teach in California. So I enjoyed Mile High. My son had Miss Woods, phenomenal. We're sad you're, well, we're not sad you're gone. I love everything about you, but great math teacher, just everything. Wanamaker, who wanted to go into PHS, Mr. Toy. I was pleasantly surprised, especially being nervous, since we came from a really good, strong school district in SoCal. And then now I have, and Anthony's been great. The district has been great with my son now as a senior. I feel confident in his future education. Luke, I pulled him out. He did not attend Mile High. I just saw the yin yang, and I was like, no. So I taught him myself last year. But this year he is in Mile High as an 8th grader, and I sub for the district right now. And as I went and saw the classes and saw how the kids move about in the hallways and how the teachers, I was really pleasantly surprised. I even noticed it a bit more mellow, like everybody just really wants to just get into class. It seems like the majority of kids just want to learn. They want to do their activities. They want to socialize. Even at lunchtime, it just seems like everyone just wants to have a good time. I didn't really notice. I was really concerned with bullying because my son was bullied in 6th grade and stuff in 5th grade. So I was like, oh my gosh, junior high, 8th grade. Oh my God, can I just keep him one more year at home and then send him to high school, kind of thing. And but it's been good. I've appreciated Mr. Binder. He was the wrestling coach at the time when my son Anthony was at Mile High, and the office staff seems very organized, and it says a lot. I've seen a lot of schools I taught 20 years in California, and, you know, for a small town, it's just really good seeing, you know, things like that. That said, I was kind of thinking, like, as he was going through the standards and, you know, going things that are happening in the school, as a parent, I love, you know, how they do Power School and Class Web and all this stuff for us to look and see. But for a parent who's not versed in curriculum or how to look up stuff, because I'm always they're always asking me, Juana, how do you find all this information? I'm like, it's online, you can see the whole program, you know, and they're like, but how? It would be nice. When I taught kindergarten and I taught third, I was in elementary, I remember we gave classes to parents. We did it as teachers. We had like a parent, this is what's happening in your classroom. This is exactly the lesson they're learning, and this is how you could support them. And out of like 35 kids, like literally in a classroom, maybe 9 showed up. But it was the 9, you know, that probably really needed it and the parents really wanted. So that's like 9 kids. That's huge, especially when you come, you know, you're thinking of testing and you're thinking of a lot of stuff. It may be small, but it was just so good. So I'm thinking, I would love it if, like, the math teachers, you know, got together. Because I keep asking Luke, hey, do you have this, do that? Yeah. And, you know, they don't want to tell you anything. Kids don't want to share. So, you know, instead of having to bug them, because they feel bugged enough and, you know, with everything else going on with COVID and stuff. So I think it would be great if, and I know it's a lot to ask of teachers. I remember it's a tough job. There's a lot to do, a lot of variables, parents, different kids, so many situations. And when I subbed, I just noticed, you know, also maybe to give, not that I've seen this, but I know as a sub, I don't know, I'm not tooting my horn or anything, but the kids, they like me because I just want to connect with them. I want to know they're real and they're person and they're, you know, especially the ones that maybe, you know, squirmy in the classroom or, you know, want to be loudmouths and stuff. And I connect with them immediately and they feel it. And I don't know what kind of training you would give to someone, to subs or to teachers, because, you know, I understand the overwhelm, but I think it would help them even with their management of some of those kids too. So anyhow, but I think overall, I'm proud to be a Prescott parent. So, boy, I said a lot more than I thought I was going to say.
Well, thank you again, both of you. So I think that was all I had. Any questions about what's going on at Mile High?
Comments or questions, anybody?
I have a couple.
Or-
Yes.
I remember when we first started capturing kids' hearts, and it was like to try and increase attendance and reduce referrals.
Yes.
And do we have any data as to if it's? I know we've done it for years before COVID. So
Right.
Like, is there data before?
Yeah, we saw, without a doubt, a decrease in referrals. And we always wanted to make sure to clarify that that's not just, okay, we put it on the teachers to deal with instead of, you know, we saw a decrease in behavior, negative behavior. From an attendance standpoint, we did see a decrease. It wasn't a major improvement, but it was certainly something we noted. And we saw, definitely we did some, what do I want to call them, like student feedback surveys, you know, and teachers in terms of how are you feeling? Do you feel respected? Do you feel like this is a safe place to be? And we saw a drastic change from before we did a pre-survey and kind of a post, and we saw improvement there. The last year, we have not been keeping track of any of that because it's yeah. So yes.
Do you think it's? I just had one concern from a substitute teacher who felt like it was a high school bus, but in the write-up that the teacher had given it seemed like they spent a good 10 minutes and 10 minutes on capturing kids' hearts, and the sub was like, well, when are they,
When are they teaching?
Yeah, is it cutting too much of the teaching out?
If it's done right, not at all. If it's done right, it's a couple minutes to do the good things, right? I think they recommend 3 to 5 tops. There's a lot even in, like, set a timer, set a music, so when it's over, it's over, so you can get on with it. The affirmations and things like that, and this social contract should be done in a way where it's naturally flowing. It's not a, okay, we're going to stop and we're going to do this thing. It's just naturally, you know, we've talked a lot about just look at your lesson. If you're moving from this activity to this activity, just plan from between the two. I'm going to say, hey, I really appreciate how Johnny did this, and so now we're moving on to this, right? And so it's not an extra thing. And then the launch should be no more than a minute. So again, if people are trained and really understand how to do it, it shouldn't be cutting into your class time at all, or much.
So do you think it's beneficial to have it every period? I always hated it.
So yes, and here's why. I think there's a lot of ways to adapt, and that's been one of the biggest revelations over the years of doing it, the last couple of years, is different teachers do it in different ways. So it's not the same thing every period. Some teachers will say, all right, I'm gonna focus on the social contract or a piece of the social contract, but I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna pick 1 or 2 terms out of it, and it's the same all week. And so at the end of the week, I'm gonna say, how do we do? Or in terms of good things, there's a lot of different ways. So it's not just, all right, who has some good things, and the same 3 kids share, but you know, it's like, all right, turn to your neighbor, share something good with each other. All right, we're moving on. And so I do think from a culture standpoint, it's worth doing it each period, even if it's in a modified version.
Really short?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Because I
Yeah,
can.
Yes.
I got it.
Andy?
So you mentioned your school-wide data reviews.
Yes.
I just am curious if you can give me your favorite example of something you've implemented like midstream in a year as a result of those data reviews that you do with your
Well,
staff.
this year, we're really hoping to use those data reviews to look at the trilateral targets and making sure that they are, essentially what we told them this year was take a look at your first semester plans and don't do your second semester targets yet, because you know what? You might be doing those same ones again. You might realize that those are not going to be something you need to do. And so that's the biggest thing we want to do, is make sure that we're responding to the needs on the ground instead of just this pre-planned, here's what we need to do, and I'm just moving ahead regardless. So when right now we're planning kind of a twice a semester. We're going to kind of mid-semester around fall break, get together, have the teachers review where they're at on those trilateral targets, using any assessment data they have at that point. And then everyone should have some really clear assessment data by the end of December with finals. And then the plan is in early January, we come together, we look at that and say, all right, now what are we doing? Are we continuing on with some of these goals or some of these targets? Are we adjusting all of them? And so that's really the biggest kind of plan right now, is how we adapt based on that data.
And will that go down to the classroom level, do you think? I mean,
So right now, no. Right now, we're planning to have a staff, like everyone brings their data, looking at that. We're going to, like I was saying up there, the collaboration is meant to be shared. It's not something hidden behind in just small groups. Now, on a more consistent basis, it will be. We call it jar time, Java-like, but the idea where they're constantly reviewing that throughout. But the big picture will be at a staff meeting, or at least department-wide. And then, like I said, the student tracking should be also having them involved pretty much weekly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just one more.
Yeah.
Excuse my ignorance on this, but your homeroom focusing on math and
Yeah.
math and ELA.
Right now,
Is
it's
that
mostly math, but yeah.
Okay. Is that across the board, or are all the students' homerooms their math courses? Is that?
No, it's across the board. The homerooms are not connected to their math course
Okay.
work at all. The only real exceptions are our student council is during that time, so they don't do quite at the same level of work. But no, across the board, and that's where the advantage of things like MobiMax come in, because it is adaptive. And then the other ones I put on there, the idea, some of the skills are things that we went to the math teachers and said, okay, regardless of where they're at, what are some absolute foundational skills they need? And not just from this year or this course that they might be in, the 7th grade or 8th grade or geometry or whatever it might be, but things that they need maybe last year that, again, maybe they missed. Again, knowing that they are working together with all their, the math teachers, they can say, this is a skill that they really need, they may not have gotten as much as they needed, so let's revisit that.
So that if it's a social studies class, then that social studies teacher needs to find a way to incorporate that into their homeroom activities.
So if I'm hearing you right, so yes, there are non-math teachers doing this.
Right.
It's not, the homeroom is not a social studies class or a science class. It's a completely, it's a 25-minute class period where they just come in.
Okay.
There is no other content during that
Okay.
time.
All right.
And so that's why we provide, we as in my assistant principal and I, we provide the lesson for the
Okay.
whole staff. And we say, all right, here's today's lesson, or here's this week's lesson.
Okay.
And so they come in, and they're doing, again, MobiMax for 15, 20 minutes, or they're doing this activity. And we know that a social studies teacher might not be able to teach that math concept, but again, if they're foundational things, then most of the time they can connect with it.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I just.
No,
I
no, it's okay.
was unclear how that was.
Anybody else?
I just had one, just a question about the power standards. I was reading them while they were up there, and it
Oh,
was
yeah.
like, you know, how energy changes or whatever. Are they like for the whole year, or is it like a quarter, and then we
Those are,
focus on more the next quarter?
those are the ones I was saying that are, right now, we're focused on first semester. And so as they went through, they looked at their first semester digs and said, what of these, which ones are really going to be our most essential? And so some of them, as we're going through and the students are tracking them, they might not even get to that until later this quarter. We did say, try to look at ones that are going to be revisited numerous times, but yeah, it's a semester by semester.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Totally unrelated to these things, Andy. Last summer, we switched the half-day teacher work time to Friday afternoons instead of Wednesdays.
Yes.
How effective has that been? There was some concern that by the end of the week, teachers would be exhausted and it wouldn't be very productive time. Is it?
I think it is much more productive on Fridays. And my biggest reason why is I feel like on Wednesdays, teachers are going, okay, yeah, wrap it up. I got to get home to take care of the kids and get ready for tomorrow, and you know, that kind of thing. And so Fridays, they go into the afternoon going, okay, I don't have to have a plan ready by tomorrow morning, and so I can focus on academics or planning or curriculum or whatever it might be. So I have not seen any dip, if anything. Like I said, I think it's definitely more productive.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Did we switch intramurals so that they're like in the clubs and stuff, so they're Monday through Thursday?
That's another thing that I think really works out with the exception of wrestling, because a lot of things happen on the weekends with wrestling, but all the other sports have like a Tuesday, Thursday competition. Clubs often were during the week, so it works out really well right now. Again, middle school, I don't know how high school would be, but at the middle school level, some of our coaches are just going, you know what, I don't need to have practice on Friday, and I can focus on coming into the afternoons, and so we're not missing all those coaches from our after-school trainings.
Nice.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great job.
Thank you.
You survived. Okay, Kelly Bradstreet will provide our instructional minute for us.
Yeah, so much for minute. I don't know why we say minute. That's a lot.
Yeah,
of talking
I
very fast.
think that's a misnomer, but
Yes. So, good evening. Last year, the state mandated ARS 15120, which is mandatory suicide prevention training. That is not a terrible mandate at all. We were not at all displeased with that. And so we've been busy trying to figure out how we're going to get all of our employees trained. And it doesn't actually, the state statute does not say we have to do all of our employees, just those employees that have direct contact with students in the upper grade levels from, like, I think it is middle school on up. But we felt like it was very important that anybody at all who might come across a kid should have this training. So we really felt like it was very important that all of them had it. And so we have required that, and we've given them opportunities for that. they have to get this training once every 3 years. So once they're 3, you're going to keep track of our cohorts, and then after 3 years, we'll remind our folks that they need to take a training again. So the next slide, oh, it's me, huh? So far, this is how we're doing. We've just recently let them know at the end of last year, and it was kind of crazy. And I don't think they understood when they had to have it done by, so we let them know again at the beginning of this year. And so this is how we're faring so far in terms of training. You can see some schools are going at it for sure. We have to give them some time to get this training done, and that's been difficult at the beginning of this year because there's been so much we have to get prepared for. But a lot of teachers and classified staff have made time for it, and we are asking that they get their training done by the end of September, which is our in-service day. So we will give them the opportunity to get that training done if they've not done so already. And so what's really great is that the state has been very proactive, and they have provided that training for us. So they gave us a whole list, not a whole list, but like 4 different trainings that we could choose from. And we're letting our staff choose as well, but we are recommending the QPR suicide prevention training online. It's self-paced, it's in English. For those who want that, there's also one in another language as well. And so many of our staff are taking it, that one, but they don't have to. And it takes about 1 to 2 hours if they're doing it right, if they're really reading everything and looking at the videos that are online and all of that. So it's on demand. Whenever they want to take it, they can start taking it. We provide that link for them to let them know that they can take it. So it's, suicide prevention, you learn something new every time you take it. There's always new research out there. There's always new information, new techniques and strategies, things that we can look for as adults to make sure that we're watching out for our kiddos. And so that is my update on suicide prevention. What questions do you have?
Can we take it?
Absolutely.
Can you get
I was just
access?
making that note.
Yeah.
I'll get you a link in the report.
I'd appreciate
Sound
it.
good?
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Anything else?
I just have one really silly question. On the list of schools, what's the ESS?
It's an exceptional
Student
student services, yeah.
Special ed.
Where is that?
That's our special ed office and all their employees that are down at the service center,
Service center, which is
which is the bus barn.
bus.
Off of Goodman.
I'll take you on a tour there.
Yeah, you should go over
Pretty
there.
cool.
It's
Bus
a-
barn
a
sounds
nice
so
bunch of
exciting.
people over there.
It's a happening place, I'll
It
tell
is
you.
a happening place.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Okay, we looked at a bunch of data last month, but one of the things we didn't get to share was the graduation rates. So Adam Neely, our high school principal, is here tonight to talk to us about graduation rates.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I get a little excited about data, so I apologize for my enthusiasm here. But as we'll go through, we are going to talk about the graduation rate. What I've got for you is 5 years worth of data. So we'll start real simple here, which is our breakdown from 2017 to 2021. So there you can kind of see the fluctuations that we've seen through this. Now, I'll show you as we go that there's a lot more to this, and so I think that's what's really key to understand. But when we're looking at just our 4-year rate, meaning that kids leaving with their diploma in 4 years, this is what it currently looks like. From here, what I've got is showing you the way that the state looks at this, which is that it gives you the 4, 5, 6, and 7-year progression, because obviously we want our students to graduate at some point, even if they're behind or they're not able to complete it. So you'll see here, you see some progression in 2017. In 2018, you see a very similar scenario where it's moving a little bit. Again, you see that growth. That one has a little bit more, which makes sense because we saw only about 80%. So you see it hit that 85% with the 2019 class by the time they hit their 7th year. Now, here we don't have a 7th year, so you can see 2020 and you can see the progression. So we have one more year of opportunity to get these kids through. 2021, you can see a big jump there. So you can imagine what 2020 and 2021 might have had, some of the reasons behind why that didn't necessarily find those 4-year graduation rates the same pace. Again, all this means, and we have not completed the 5th year, this means that we have kids who did not necessarily graduate on graduation day, but somewhere between that time and now, they've completed that, and so we've moved from 78.7 up to 86. Yeah.
Is that like a in-school diploma, or is it a GED type?
No, it's an in-school diploma.
In-school diploma?
Yes.
So they're
yes.
taking, you have older students on campus taking them online?
Well, that's kind of the next thing I want to tell you a little bit about, because the piece that often gets confused, and I'll be honest, you know, if you look at the numbers and you're like, why in the heck does Prescott High School show something different than other local schools? The reality is that we have one thing different than every other school in the state, which is that we currently have a DRP. A DRP is a dropout recovery program. Most schools have an AOI. We could talk about a ITM real soon. But the difference is that the DRP, a dropout recovery program, which we want to talk about, a great thing to try and do for kids is to keep them from dropping out. That program does not remove those kids from our cohort. And that's really the biggest difference when you look at our numbers, is that I've got an example from last year and I'll show you, okay? So I was kind of playing with the numbers here. Again, like I told you, I get a little too excited about this stuff. So Genesis is our DRP, our dropout recovery program, and I just wanted to show you how it impacts the Prescott High School graduation rate. So last year we had 362 students in our cohort. That means they started at Prescott High School, they moved through in some form or fashion. But 101 of them at some point were enrolled in Genesis. Now what that means is that at some point they shifted, but they stayed on our total. The majority of these kids don't do that on the day before graduation. They don't just find out that they're struggling and need to shift right at the last second. They go through and they find that out ahead of time. The way it's been set up is that they have to be 16. So we have sophomores in the middle of their year who are struggling, who may move to that program. It's not as common, right? It's usually kids later moving through who've looked at it and gone, man, I need some help, I'm behind, I'm struggling, and I gotta make some adjustments. And so you'll see that we have that 101. Now in this cohort of 362, we also had 11 students who remain at Prescott High School. That could be for a majority of reasons. That could be a student who's in a special education classroom that hasn't moved past that point, hasn't completed their goals, they have a little bit more time for those things. So there's a really different scenario. But I just went kind of generic here. If you take out those 101 kids who were in Genesis, which I think the majority of them would be, 250 out of 261, that's a graduation rate of 95.8%. Now I'm not sitting here saying that that's what our graduation rate would be. Some of those kids may not make that. But I do think that it's really safe to say that without those Genesis students, we'd be estimating somewhere around a 90% graduation rate pretty comfortably. Okay, and I taught math for a long time. I'm pretty comfortable with these numbers, and that's where I really think we would land with this. Maybe I'm underestimating it. I don't know, but I think it's a safe estimation of where we would be. What I think we're doing is stuff like this. Genesis went through and gave those kids an opportunity to complete something that maybe in the setting we were in, they wouldn't have been able to do. Doesn't mean that we can't find other ways, but the difference is that most school districts take a kid who's in that scenario and they move them to another school. And so they don't get counted as part of that cohort like I just showed you. So they would be in an AOI trying to complete their schooling. That's how they're not being counted against their graduation rate the same way we are. Our kids stay with us in a little different format trying to complete that. Now obviously there's some changes coming up with that, so I don't really know what the future of the DRP is. I know we will have the ITM hopefully, which that one may attach within our graduation rate, but the idea that we're trying to make sure that these kids have an opportunity to graduate is really the goal. So that's this piece. One other thing I would like to show you, and I mean, it comes across maybe as bragging, but I'm so proud of our students, I really am, which is that here is a senior survey from last year. I was just showing you all those numbers of who did what. Well, this is a breakdown, and it's not every one of our students. I think we had 167 students respond, but right there, 4-year university, 2-year college, and if we throw in technical and trade school, we're looking at about 88% of our kids who are choosing a 2-year school or more, because a trade school really is a 2-year school. So, I mean, when you look at that, we also have military service, we have missionary services, and we have some people who chose to go right into their field. So it's nice to see that we're making a huge impact at Prescott High School, preparing them for what's next, which will be when I have an opportunity to follow Mr. Binder's amazing presentation, I will be talking about what we're doing to prepare our kids for what's next, because that is our goal. Our goal is to prepare students for after high school, whatever that looks like for them. Any questions for me? We
So
don't
you
have to
don't-
sit on that slide. We'll go to that one.
You don't really know right now how changing to the ITM, if we do that, is going to affect this program at this point, or?
I don't know if anybody has knowledge different than what I have, but I would assume that if they're in the ITM, they're part of Prescott High School. So those students will
So
still
they'll
be
stay.
part of the
That cohort.
the cohort of kids. Yeah,
Right.
the cohort's the best way to describe it, because that's how
Right.
the state describes it.
Okay. And so then compared to other schools that have an AOI, potentially, you're saying that those AOI students are taken out of the graduation rate?
They are.
Really?
Considered a different school.
Yeah, it's
Really?
because they're legitimately moving them to a school, and there's different advantages and disadvantages to
Okay.
that. I've been doing our A through F label data for a long time, and that school, if it was sitting on its own, would probably not look very good. So there's some interesting scenarios that play both sides of that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we just took those kids and we gave a school grade on just what's happening there, well, obviously if it's a dropout recovery, we might not see the same type of results that we see from the entire cohort of Prescott High School.
Penalty to be an AOI though, right? You get 95%.
Right.
But what we're hearing is those schools that have been doing that for a long time, they're already comfortable with that. They're going to keep doing that. It's working
Sure.
for them. So
Sure.
it'll be interesting to see. I mean, there are a lot of good reasons to do an ITM too.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I didn't mean to get us down another path, but it does connect.
To me, it just seems more honest, I guess, to keep it with this type of an approach and keep these kids as our kids so we get a true view of what graduation rates are looking like.
Yeah, and that's
To
what
me, that seems.
that's what I think you're getting here. And by the way, whatever it's worth, our advisors do a senior board, meaning they take every one of their seniors and they go through and they break down where they're at with credits and what their plans are and all those different things. And as someone who's looked at those, I really think this does represent, even though I told you it was only 160 some students, I think it's pretty safe to say that this does represent the majority of what we're seeing, because I know, not every kid fills out that survey, but it does show a really good representation.
But that's why this is an important presentation, because how long have we been putting those numbers out and people are just saying like, wonder why Prescott's low? But now we're explaining why.
Okay.
And so I think we keep that out in front and keep people understanding why we're doing what we're doing. And then when you see these numbers, you go, oh, things are going pretty well.
Yeah, I know numbers can be deceiving sometimes, right?
Other questions? I have several, Adam.
You got it.
I come from, my background is dropout prevention. That's what I did for a living. So I'm less concerned about what the number shows. I want to know what's happening with those kids who are not graduating.
Right.
I care about every one of them. And let's say we have a 90% graduation rate.
Sure.
Do we know what happens to that other 10%? Why we lost them? Where they went? Why they didn't graduate?
Right. Well, I got to be honest. I think we could do much better. Do I think we're trying real hard with that? I do. I think there's some great pieces to that program. Could we do better? Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to make connections with every one of these kids. I mean, that's what it's all about anyway. It's connecting with students no matter what their scenario is. And so I think we can do better if we're given the opportunity to stay in that purview. But whether it's this or it's an at-risk kid at Prescott High School, our job is to figure that out ahead of time. And that's one of the school goals that we're really working on this year too, which is we don't want to wait till it's too late. Mm-hmm. What's the point? I mean, we're not in the game to wait till, to react to students at that point. We're in it to try and get to them before they need that and maybe help them, steer them down the path of whatever it is that's best for them in the future, whether that's, taking a kid who's going to go into the workforce and finding them a trade before they do that, or whatever it happens to be. We can do those things.
One of the primary things that keeps a kid from graduating on time or at all is failing their freshman math class. That puts them behind, and a lot of them never do get caught up, and it's, I think.
Yeah.
I also wonder why out of a class of 362 kids, we have 101 of them who need to go into Genesis.
Well,
or
I'll tell.
choose to go into Genesis.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I would tell you that I don't believe that at any point the enrollment was at that number in Genesis. I mean, like if we looked at it right now, there'd be
That's
about
the
60
total.
kids. It's just the idea that at some point they shifted in and
Yeah.
out. You know, we have kids who go through life-changing scenarios. I mean,
Yeah.
I see multiple students on campus today who last year were in Genesis and now they got caught up and now they're seniors moving forward
Yeah.
to progress to their, and those things don't show up in a graduation
they
rate. We don't see that, right? But those are kids who are now progressing and ready to be back on track. So some of it is, you know, that life happens to these kids
Oh, yeah.
and things, and I think we saw more of that than ever over the last couple of years.
And Genesis was partially designed to draw students from the whole area.
Yes.
And that was a big part of the origination of it was,
Okay.
so we're bringing kids with Genesis. So a big piece, an exciting piece of what Rachel and Adam and the gang's going to be working on this year is, what's the best bet for those kids? That was why we did not get into, when we added to the budget, we added Rachel to study and create this online program. And we left the DRP staff exactly where they're at and had many conversations that said, we need to hang on to that staff and make sure that we have the capacity to do what we have to do for those kids. Knock on doors, whatever
Yeah.
it takes.
Yeah.
And so the big study this year is, do we still need the DRP to do that? Can it be done in the ITM? AOI was pretty rigorous. We were worried about that, about how we were going to take care of those kids in an AOI. So that's yet to be discovered. It's going to be a great discussion, and I think we should really keep the board updated a lot and maybe lean on Deb a little bit because she's been down that road.
And I'm not trying to be critical, but
no,
I'm
I-
bringing up questions I think we need to be looking at.
Yeah.
And seeing where we can meet the needs of all of our kids, every child, every day.
Well, it reminds me of the quote that Mr. Binder put up, which is that we can continue to improve every single day, right? That 1% growth. I think that that's the idea here, which is we can keep making those impacts.
Anybody else?
I just have one comment. We have almost 80% attending university or two-year colleges, which is fantastic. Do we have any data on, I know it's been a problem nationwide lately, not just Prescott or anything, that students aren't ready to go into English 101 and Math 101, and they have to take remedial. Are we looking at that and trying to prepare these kids more so? I mean, I think that should be a goal. Like, when a kid graduates from high school, they should at least be able to get into English 101 and Math 101 when they
Right.
go to college.
Right.
Like, that should be the goal. Can we just think of that in the back of your head when you're...
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I don't know that I have any data on it. I'll tell you
Right,
that
I know.
because we have lots of kids taking those courses at Prescott High School, we do get a little bit of an advantage from that because we start to see them, you know, they go take the active placer at Yavapai College to test it, you know, take 101 and 102, or, you know, college algebra, whatever, wherever they fit. But I don't know if we're necessarily knowing how those kids do when they leave Prescott High School, and then they start at, say, Yavapai College, and whether they, you know, have to go to a remedial class or not. Though I think Mr. Howard and I were talking about some kind of a research study today she's trying to do to see what happens when kids move past. So I think we have the potential to pull out some of that data and find out a little bit more.
How much does the AccuPlacer cost for kids to take?
I don't know that it does cost for our kids to
Is there
take
any way
it.
that we could, you know, just have the kids take it, even if they're not, you know, like they're getting ready to graduate, they could just
That's a nice
take it
idea.
and see where they are?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a large population who do take it because we end up getting that data,
Right.
and we have kids because they're all trying to get into their dual enrollment courses, and whether or not they fit. I mean, you know, a great example is that we have a lot of CTE courses that are dual enrollment, and they still have expectations that are, you know, like a certain reading or writing level. So they do take some of those, even though they're not necessarily taking English 101. So we're getting some of it, but you're right, maybe we could do more.
Okay, because I just had one of my workers, and it was so sad. They're online doing their math for college, and the problem was 6 plus -3, and they're debating whether it's -9 or +9. I'm like, no! Okay, so anyways,
She didn't know her boss was a math teacher.
I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, so I mean, personally, I would like to do away with the end of year testing and do that, acuplacers, and just, have that our goal. But anyways, that's just my idea.
Well, it fits right in
I
with
like
what
it.
we're trying to do, which is we want to do whatever we can to help kids be. So if that is what's next for them, that's it. I mean, right now, kids in English 12 or 12th grade English class are learning how to write a resume, and because that may be their next step. So we're trying to do some of those pieces. But I agree, that's a cool thing.
But yeah, I mean, even if they just want to go into the workforce, it still seems like it's a good goal. I mean, that if they did want to go to college, they could go to college,
Agreed.
that it would be a good goal for them. Okay, my 2 cents.
Anything else?
The only other question I ask is what percentage of seniors and juniors, I guess, are taking AP courses and then taking the AP exams before they graduate? Do you know?
Well, that's a good question. We offer sophomores, juniors, and seniors
Okay.
AP courses because we
Okay.
do have some sophomore AP history mostly, and then if
Uh-huh.
if you're advanced, you could be in an AP course or a dual enrollment. I don't know what percentage we could have, but I could easily figure that out. I mean, I could take what we had this past year and figure it out. But I mean, I was working through that data not too long ago, and we had kids who'd taken 5, 6, 7 AP tests,
Yeah.
and had met 3 or higher on that
Right.
throughout that time. It's pretty.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty amazing in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I'd like to see those numbers if you can get them. Like,
Yep.
what percentage of our students are taking those and earning that college credit ahead of time? I know my daughter skipped out of her first calculus class because she took an AP Calc.
Right.
So thanks for your math teaching on that. You helped get her
We'll
there.
get you that info.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
We know that last year was not the easiest year for our students, or frankly, for our staff. And so we have really focused now and added a position for our social, emotional, and mental health programs. And Jessie Stickle is here to tell us about what we're doing.
Hi, everyone. You just want to take one and pass it down. It's just a paper. First of all, just thank you for being here. Everybody in this room obviously cares a significant amount about not only our community, but our students, and just the future of where we're headed. And so just thank you for showing up. That is one of my favorite things that people do in life, is show up. And when you have the courage to show up, it pays off. As we know, it's not so much a mental health program as it is a people and a presence. That's what we're really here to talk about today. And if you wanted to break it down, what is the payoff? In fact, it's actually for every $1 that you invest into a social emotional program or position, you get $11 return in your community. And I just think that is so huge. So not only thank you for showing up, but thank you for allowing me to be here. This truly is a dream job that I get to do. I've been with your district for 7 years, and I've worked and carved my way in a various amount of positions, and I started off as a substitute for a long-term position in the counseling department, and then I moved into creating a student success program that focused all about social emotional needs in the high school setting. And now I'm so excited and honored that I get to serve you on a district level. This really is so amazing. And it's really, the proof is out there. Why social emotional? Because it absolutely hires certain things and lowers other things. And I like the S, if you notice, I'm a little alliteration queen here. And we're just swapping out the S's, okay? So we are increasing success in school and beyond by 11% also. We're having self-efficacy skills, self-awareness, giving kids a sense of purpose, and giving them abilities to create and learn and practice. That's the huge word, practice, because that's where confidence comes from anyway, is this ability to practice these skills in a safe environment. And when kids and adults can do that, we get better. We get better together. And in return, we lower things that don't honor our community, like substance abuse, school day disruptions or delinquency, stress, anxiety, sadness, society crime and violence, and sickness. When we have happy kids in school, they are healthier, and therefore they get to stay in their seats. And that's what it's really all about, is bringing the community back together. Now that's just some facts that I found, but these are statements from the students that sit in our seats. I learned that I have more control over certain things than I originally thought I did. Wow, that's huge, locus of control. I learned that believing in myself helps me get work done. Yes, productivity and belief in self. I learned that the use of positive coping skills can be very helpful for my stress levels. That is a skill that we need for the rest of our lives. I learned how to be more cooperative with others. Again, we have to continue to work together and grow together and be together in this community and beyond. And from a parent, I'm grateful that your district is so student-centered and has so many support systems in place. And this parent not only stated that, but got emotional with gratitude because their daughter, they didn't know what to do and went to the academic advisor and got to speak with her. And she had a plethora of resources that she could just lay out as options. And that was very, very comforting for this parent. So the more that we can help our children feel capable and confident, the less anxious and isolated they're going to feel. And if you think about yourself as an adult, the same is true. When you can feel competent in something or confident in something, the more capable you are, the less alone you feel. And that's what our schools allow us to do. They allow us to come together to create those feelings that empower us and fill us with joy instead of feeling alone and helpless. So how is PUSD doing this? My position is a great example. So once again, thank you. And creating this position, it's been like a puzzle that I said that we were working on what the picture of the puzzle box looked like. And we had a couple different visions, but I'm very excited to tell you that we have settled on what the picture on the box looks like now. And we also got our 4 corner pieces in place. So we are set to go. And this is what it's going to be explained in the future slides. Really, the goal is building capacity. That's the puzzle piece picture. And we've already been doing this in so many ways, but to give you the 4 corner pieces, it's really about culture, the counseling departments that are in place, the climate, and how we are collaborating with our amazing community that we are all a part of. All right, so the first piece is culture, and that's really just the belief system behind what we do and why we do it. So as Andy Binder stated and Adam Neely stated, we have awesome cultures in place already with Kids at Hope, capturing kids' hearts, and the fact that we focus and thrive on parent engagement. So Kids at Hope, just a little bit more detail into that. So that's really just feeling that there really isn't a kid at risk. A kid is simply just at hope. And how do we find and give them hope? And we do that through a propelling future. And we do that by lining them up with mentors. In this program, they call them ACEs. And really, we put a couple ACEs in their back pocket so that they can lay down a winning hand. And that happens with mentorship throughout the school district, whether that's a paraprofessional, whether that's their counselor, whether that's their direct teacher, whether that's somebody in the cafeteria. These kids are seen, and it's intentional connection with students. Next is Capturing Kids' Hearts. This is a wonderful program, and it gives us an opportunity to excel. And what does that mean? It allows us to be intentional with how we engage our students. So again, that's all through the greetings, the talking about the good things. One of my favorite things at the high school to do is walk out on the lunch campus in the middle of the day when they get to be outside and they're socializing and just ask them, what are the good things? So I know, Carrie, you had some concerns about how much is this taking away from the academics. It's really about a culture that's happening wherever the student is. And so when we can engage them in their social atmosphere, when they're outside, I see another teacher doing this with hanging bags up outside of right on their door before students will leave their classroom. And that's where students will get to put affirmations in each student's bag. So it's not even something that has to be a formalized procedure in a class. It can be, but it can also be just a part of the classroom environment where kids just are trained initially in those beginning portions of the school year. This is what we do. This is how we treat each other. And then it sticks and it stays and it progresses throughout the campuses. Communication, again, that's where we're giving kids opportunities to practice language we're also doing that with students by asking really good questions of them. So when we do the social contract, we are all in agreement of what we've signed up for, what we said we will sit together and do, and how we are going to respect and show up for each other. If those things don't happen, now we have a conversation as a class. Essentially, it's like a school family, and I think you're never too old for that. And so that's what I love so much about this opportunity to work with this curriculum, is that it empowers students and staffs because it gives them a script and a language to use. And one of the things, if you ever have traveled, when you go to a different culture, you recognize there is a common language. And that's exactly what this curriculum does. It provides a common language for our schools to use. And then my favorite is launch. And launch is really just sharing something that is so inspiring and that gives hope. And so again, these two just line up so nicely together. And then lastly, that parent engagement piece, community meetings, check-ins, resources, tools, and I'll touch upon this in the next slide as well. So the next piece is climate. And what's the difference with climate? Climate is just how we're practicing this, right? So this is a little bit more in detail about some of the things that we're doing. We set up structure and safety through daily schedules, talking about the good things, greeting each other, doing the affirmations. Again, being present, quality questions, social contract, setting goals, creating hope. We do connection to home, and so again, we have opportunities to have parent meetings, obviously through our conferences, and we even have talk about expanding this into creating some parent workshops, simply because parents are reaching out and they're asking for more tools and tips. And so that's one thing I would love to grow this year, is providing a parent workshop. In my past, I worked for Head Start, and that was actually my role. I was a homeschool teacher where I would walk into homes and we would teach parents different skills, and we'd provide monthly trainings on a variety of topics that meant something to them. And so I would love to incorporate that even more so in our district. We do resources and tools. We have the social emotional website that was created where we have videos that are on there weekly that parents can continue to go back to based on the topic. And then we also give reflection questions that they can sit with their student and ask them. And then last but not least, the professional development piece is huge. We recognize that this year one of our goals too is to reach more staff, not just the certified or but all of the staff, where we are able to work with the bus drivers, the security guards, the substitute teachers. That's a wonderful suggestion. And again, getting out some information ahead of time to them so that they know what they're walking into. And so topics that we will address: mindfulness, de-escalation skills, communication skills. We are partnering with the community counselors, and they would like to bring in some neuroscience training on trauma. You know, we have to be real honest, what we all went through was traumatic, and people need a space to process that, and that's what we can do. We can give them a lens to look through so that we can reset ourselves and move forward so we can re-engage. Suicide prevention, as Kelly talked about, and then obviously we are doing that through intentional connections, through having social emotional committees at each campus. All right, coaching and counseling, this is one of my favorites, and so we have basically addressing, so it's kind of a tier system, right? So tier 3 would be general ed, and that a lot of those students can be met through general classroom. And then you have your more intensive interventions or strategies that need to be put in place. And to do that, we're doing one-on-one counseling or check-ins. We're also doing that through group, through having circles, right? So we have some circles started at the high school. One started today for the Boys to Men group. Tomorrow we're starting the girls circle. And then we are also moving into the middle schools, which is going to be wonderful. We have a counselor that's working on 5 different social groups because there's a need and students are reaching out. And we're also going over to Granite and starting a group for 5th and 6th graders tomorrow as well, which is going to be wonderful. And then Ann Chavez is doing some smaller groups with the 4th graders at Abaya Judd. And the topics range anywhere from pro-social skills to emotional regulation, anxiety awareness, coping skills. And coping skills can include life skills such as time management and organization. But ultimately, it's a space where students get to come in and identify what they need and then take the tool away with them to start putting it into practice. All right, and the last corner piece is collaboration. As stated before, we have such a supportive community, and people are always reaching out to tell us what services they have and what can be incorporated into the district. And so we are working with Boys to Men. We're working with Full Circle, which excitingly, somebody just reached out from Embry-Riddle, and they want to give us some of their students to come on over and do some philanthropy with our students by sitting in these circles. And then the other mentors that make up those circles are retirees, which is wonderful because we're hitting both spectrums of our community, and we're all getting involved. The launch pad, I had an editor, so somebody that edited was a little biased. They loved the launch pad, and what's not to love? It's really a wonderful teen space in our community, and now it actually houses Boys to Men, but they also come into our classrooms and they work with our freshman academies, and they talk all about life skills and preparing resumes and all sorts of different skill sets that can be implemented and utilized not only now, but in the future. Mental health trainings for staff, so we're working directly with Beth Dunn this year. She's working through MAT for us, so she's the one that's going to be doing some neuroscience training for us. We have county mental health support for staff as well, so when we have crises that come up, we are able to reach out to our community helpers, and they can also come in and service our district as well. We have the employee assistant program. MAT Force I already mentioned. Arm to Know is a great partnership. And then we have a Toastmasters youth program that is brand new. And again, this is something that we're going to try to promote more and more because it gives students a place to articulate their words and give them voice. All right. Really, this said, we're doing this. We are connecting, we are supporting, and we're doing this by one day, one moment, one connection at a time. And the next few slides are really just the names to who we have on our team, and it is full. So I'm not going to read through everything, but just please know that we are well equipped, and I feel very confident in our abilities to meet the students' needs this year. We have a plethora of services at the high school, at the middle school, and at the elementary schools. We have character coaches, we have academic advisors, and then we have mental health counselors and even behavior specialists. And then if that wasn't enough, these are our awesome community resources that we have in place as well, so we can reach out and continue to have people come in and pour into our district. Overall, I just want to say thank you again for being here. We really are so very lucky to have you sitting in front of us. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions?
I have one. What is your social emotional website?
Oh, sure. So it's right actually on the district homepage, and it's right above, I know visually where it is, but I can send that link to you, but it's,
Okay, so it's on the district website?
yep, you can find it right there. I believe it's on the right-hand side.
And who leads the group circles? What kind of a person?
Sure. So initially,
Doctor, or
what's that?
is it a trained psychologist?
So everybody that sits in our circles is trained through the Boys to Men protocol or the Full Circle protocol, and it's basically a listen, accept, and encourage. So nobody is giving advice. They are simply sitting in a space allowing students to come and talk about that. Any of the circles that we are giving tools and tips, those are run by us, the trained professionals in the district. And so Ann Chavez will do social emotional with the pro-social skills. She runs that one. I will run certain ones with time management or specific tips, things like that, where I'm actually giving instruction to students.
Are they trained psychologists, trained social?
What you'll find is some of the volunteers are retired mental health providers, and so they definitely have that background, but they go through an extensive workshop where they learn the skills to listen, accept, and encourage. Last year I ran one. It was an 8-week course that I ran volunteers through to make sure that they were equipped and ready to sit in the circles. And they are also sitting alongside of one of us. And so I'm in the circle, or Thomas Hine will be in the circle at Mile High starting later this month. Carissa will be in the circle at the Granite Mountain.
And they're all certified counselors, all of our staff.
Yes, so a staff member will sit with these volunteers.
Okay, so you have lots of volunteers. And what is a character coach?
Oh, sure. So essentially, I'm becoming more and more familiar with this as well. A character coach is really a supplemental position that helps out the counselors. And so they're the ones that are more in the classroom environments. They're working with kids during the recess, during the lunch hour. They're seeing students, and they are supplemental support to the mental health counselors on each campus.
Are they volunteers or are they paid?
Nope, they're
They're
paid
paid.
positions. They're similar to a school counselor. They just have a different degree.
And degree in what?
I think it's a variety of things. They have a bachelor's degree.
Bachelor's.
It's a classified position.
Oh, it's a classified position, okay.
Yeah, and you know, our elementary schools obviously don't have assistant principals, so that's a piece that principals brought out, and we originally paid for that with tax credit monies. So it's very creative that the district leadership team came up with.
Yeah, we got permission because character education is a viable tax credit use, and so we got permission to use donations through tax credit to pay, and it's just they're positions to help students reflect on behaviors and choices that they've made and how they can maybe choose in a similar situation at a future time, and so they're really helping with choice making and having that level of support at the elementary schools and Granite.
4th year with those positions?
4th year.
Oh, I was gonna say, are they new? Because I don't remember.
No,
Okay, they're new.
They're at the
Gotcha.
elementary level.
They're at the
K6.
elementary level.
What's our current counselor to student ratio?
I think it all depends, so how you're looking at the numbers, so I'll go back. And so if you look at it, so the mental health therapist there at the high school, she sees all the SPED students, and so she's able to have basically students that have an IEP, those are her caseload. We have a new counselor on staff, and so she is definitely getting filled up. Her focus is going to be on the freshmen. And then I do the student success program, and so I probably see about 125 students throughout the year that come in at different various points. And then the academic advisors, they are split up through alphabet order, and so it depends on, so I believe 300 to 400 students per academic advisor. And then at the middle school, I would have to ask Andy, he might know more
Yeah,
information about that.
we can bring a breakdown of that staff to student ratio, because I think you're seeing that a lot across Arizona, and it's not good at all.
No, it's not.
But I would say, you're looking right here at a model program. You're probably not going to find a program this robust. And you're probably going to start seeing other districts call us and say, can you share with us how you're doing this? So we're ahead of the curve on this.
Just because we are able to provide such supplemental support and strategic programs outside of the basic roles that these counselors are playing, we're able to do different interventions, which is really helpful.
Right, so I guess what I'm hearing is that the ratio may not be what to look at, but rather when we take into account like advisors, the character coaches, this program, et cetera.
Yeah, they're able to have a referral service. So just like that parent testimony, he went to his academic advisor, but then she was able to refer to a different program that's a little bit more, it's a smaller, more intimate setting for that student. And so that's what I feel like we have the advantage of in our district, is we have these little pockets of places that we can put students, whether in a small group or on a one-on-one session. Definitely.
So to follow that thread, I'm curious, Jesse, just going back to the beginning where you spoke to building capacity around social emotional support, where right now do you think is the greatest need in terms of resources?
Yeah, this came up at our social emotional committee last week, actually, and we really just want to get in there with our other staff, like our paraprofessionals, our bus drivers, our security guards, anybody that's transitioning with students or sees them in passing. The piece where, the secretaries, where they're definitely getting some eye time. And so giving them that skill and that lens to look through, and knowing that that can be so impactful, even if it is for 5 minutes. And so it's really helping that climate of our school continue that warmth that we know exists. Yeah.
Thank you.
How many volunteers do you have about?
It ranges. We obviously, due to COVID, a few of them have dropped out, but now because of this Embry-Riddle connection, I really feel like we're going to fulfill that even greater. And so last year I had 8 women that were mentors for the Full Circle program, and for Boys to Men, I would say anywhere from 4 to 8 mentors. And so we, on a full year, we were running 3 girls circles, 2 Boys to Men circles. That was just high school level, because that's my experience. And then in the middle school, we're going to expand, obviously. And like I said, we hope to start up 5 circles this year at the middle school, and then 2 at Granite. And typically, we have about 2 to 3 volunteers that sit in each circle. Yeah.
Can I add one thing just really quickly to what Jesse's saying? This is fantastic. We look at the resources that we've got, the structure to this, it's amazing. I was on a phone call earlier today with the Milestones Committee. Some of you are familiar with that. That includes law enforcement leaders, mental health leaders, and school leaders. You have County get together and talk about various things. It's typically there for support if there's potential of violent offender, if there's other issues ancillary to that we talk about. One of the other people on the committee, I'm the school liaison on this side of the mountain. The school liaison on the other side of the mountain for Yavapai County is the principal of Camp Verde High School. They're starting to want to do what PUSD did years ago. We were early adopters, I want to say, in terms of putting the structure into mental health support, social emotional support for students. And by the way, if you can find another district in Arizona, anywhere near our size, that has a director of social emotional mental health learning, I'd like to meet them. But at any rate, we've got this structure going, and they're trying to do the same thing. They've got some funding, they've got approval from their board, and they've posted positions, but they cannot. So we can't get anybody. We said that's the same thing on that side of the mountain generally. They just can't get mental health professionals to come and work in their schools. We're so fortunate. We have a single unfilled position. Every one of the positions, the board said, okay, that's important. Let's do that. We've been proactive. We've gotten the word out there. Jesse's done a great job recruiting, and we've got quality people for the position. And that's super unusual.
Yeah, we'll have a new counselor starting in just a few weeks at Abaya Judd, and she's wonderful, and I think she's going to bring a plethora of experience to our team as well.
Great.
Jesse, my guess is the majority of these groups and so on are voluntary on the part of the student. They choose to
Yes.
participate. What do we do? How do we get referrals for those kids who may need some form of counseling and don't step forward and say, I have a need?
Sure. Yeah, I actually just had a student today in one of the circles. He said, circle is not for me. I was able to do a follow-up conversation with him, and luckily he is open to one-on-one, but the group setting was just too much for him. And so in that setting, I think we follow up. And so whether that's follow up directly with that student and continue to invite them in for a conference or a check-in, or we follow up with parent engagement and just touch base and say, hey, this is what we're noticing, or this is what are the possibilities or the options here at our district. Just know that we're available. So I really think that it's that, reiteration. It takes 7 times for somebody to become comfortable with an atmosphere. And so it's a numbers game. And if we can continue to put ourselves in front of those students or have those conversations with those parents, it will become more familiar for them.
Do we teach our staff what to look for?
Yes.
For a student who may need some kind of counseling or support or whatever?
Yeah, there's definitely a few factors. I know at the high school level, we've been I put out a survey every beginning of every year, and I say, just know that there's more additional support for your students out there if you notice any of these things, and it's basically a Google form that gives them a whole list of factors, whether it's be academic, whether it be coping skills, whether it be behavior, any of those things. If there's a red flag that the student might need more attention, then they get referred to the program, and then we can have that conversation. And then that's where the student is able to say yes or no. And I always tell them, this is your choice. This is an option for you and a safe space for you to decide what you want next. Now, again, that's obviously on the high school level, but that's my goal, to continue to build capacity. And again, Andy could probably speak more so on the middle school level on what their system is for referrals and how they know what's happening with the students that are accepting or aren't accepting.
And we've done some district-wide trauma-informed instruction, but it's been a couple years, so we need to circle back on that. And that's just classroom teachers knowing what to look for while they're teaching, and exactly what you're saying.
And that's one thing I really do hope to grow as well. And so this will be like the before, and then if I come speak to you at the end of the year, is really gathering that data from the other campuses, because it is all right there. Our students are being seen, and if they're declining services, then that needs to be noted too, so that we can know where the gap is and we can know what we need to focus on. And so that's definitely going to be something that's implemented as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How does the school resource officer position fit into this at all?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't
Okay.
put him necessarily on here,
Okay.
but he is front staff, front and center, and he's walking the halls and he's checking into
Okay.
things, and he's definitely out there in the halls walking with the principals and wherever there is a need. And
Okay.
he was in a classroom last week, in fact, helping a student de-escalate. And so he is there as we need him to be, and I'm sure he's doing a plethora of other things.
And does that person participate in trainings with you too? Or do they just bring the law enforcement perspective into it? How much
Yeah.
are they brought into the fold of the counseling side in
Sure.
addition to their law enforcement skills?
Definitely for consultation as needed. And then I had a conversation with him as well last week, asking him that if he'd be willing to talk to teachers and staff at a staff meeting so that he could start to give teachers things to look for when they, because we receive this training as counselors, like what to look for when substances are coming into our schools. But we don't always know if all of our teachers know that. And I said, I think that'd be a really great resource for our whole staff to just start to recognize if you could bring in a couple objects so that we know what to look for and what it looks like, or what are some of the symptoms that the kids would be appearing as. And so that would be another training that I would hope to get into a staff meeting when we have with them on Fridays.
And I guess also for that person to recognize some of the symptoms that would require referral to you, as opposed to saying, you know, this student is acting out in a way and they get referred through a legal proceeding. Maybe there's some mental health needs that should be met for that student as well. So hopefully that's kind of cross-pollination that's going on.
Yes.
Definitely.
And
Well,
that
and the
person's
SRO is a
being involved.
part of the admin team, so
Okay.
he's in the loop on what's happening. He's in those meetings with admin, and so
Okay,
they talk a lot together, I think, so
Okay.
it crosses over
good.
for sure.
Yeah, it's really nice how once you have that in place, it's really easy. It's a simple link and you pass it on to anybody. I have instructional coaches that use it, teachers that use it, parents that use it, students can refer students. And so it's really a wonderful place to gather data, and it's very simple. It literally takes probably a minute to fill out, and so it's very accessible for everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I just have one little comment. I like it. It all sounds fantastic. But I'm seeing just a general trend, and I'm just wondering if you could put this into your purview of education, because you're from kindergarten to, like, you're all the way through, all the
Yeah.
grades, right? I see that in our society, we're not stressing the importance of education. Like, I don't know how to put it, but, like, do you see somewhere in this, not just using the, you know, when you're doing the emotional, could you stress that, you know, it is really important that you get a good education, that you know, so the little grades are getting and the kids are understanding that it's
The value.
important, the importance of the education also, along with the social.
Yeah, and really, we find that happens in our one-on-one discussions or in our small groups, where we talk about choices and natural results that occur because of choices. And so that's really a spot where we definitely talk about real-life experience, and students can see and articulate that for themselves. They notice things, and contrast is a great teacher. And so it is absolutely a welcomed conversation, and we just talk all about freedom. A lot of these students want freedom, and we are able to discuss what that looks like and how sometimes the discipline is what gives you the freedom, and that is definitely a value point for sure of these programs.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. And I really think that that's where the social emotional, from the very first slide, that's where you'll see the payoff though, because when you invest and you allow a student to feel safe, seen, and heard, they now are going to produce more things because they're going to want to. It's an innate ability to want to contribute. And so when they can feel those significance and feel heard and those needs are met, now they are a contributing member of society for us here and beyond.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just keep in the back of your head, keep promoting, education is important,
Yeah.
education is important, okay?
The truly educated never graduate.
Yep.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Reason.
Thank you, Jesse. Moving on to summary of current events.
Shout out to our colleague Marty Reed out in YouTube land. Marty has a little cold, and so played it safe and stayed home. I think she gave herself a COVID test and it's negative, but she played it safe. So we miss Marty, but chatted a bunch today and made sure we're going to cover everything she wants to make sure is covered. High school athletics is back in full swing, and it's a bit healing this year. I think you're kind of seeing that across the board, and so I got just a quick update for you on that, and then we'll move forward. Badminton and football are undefeated on the season so far. It's early, but they're undefeated. And football had an impressive win at Glendale on Friday. Did anyone catch that game? Either streaming, you can watch it streaming these days, or hear it on the radio, or go down there in person. They'll be home this Friday, playing Camelback, and it's their Hall of Fame game. So I think they're going to induct 5 individuals and 2 teams at halftime. So catch that if you can, Friday night, 7 o'clock, Bill Shepherd Field. Of course, we also have super strong teams in volleyball, cross country, golf, and swimming, and mountain biking. Defending all kinds of championships this year. I just highly recommend checking out a game or a match. Get out there, and it's like I say, we missed it a lot last year, and our kids work super hard, so go check them out.
Okay, anybody else have any current events they'd like to share? Last week, I went to all the schools in the district and just said thank you to all of our nurses. They were very, very appreciative. They have been working extremely hard, and, you know, I thought they deserved some recognition and attention, and so that was a real upper for me. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or comments on any of the items on the consent agenda?
Clark, why, do we know, we had 5 teachers resign or leave, do we know why?
Yeah, not all of those were in the last month, but they're all
Okay.
on this month's agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we know why they're leaving? I
Well,
mean, is it just they're
we
moving
can't really
or
talk about that
they don't
in
like us
public.
anymore? Or
Yeah, a variety of reasons, not something we can
Oh,
share
okay.
in public, but
Right.
I'd be happy to give
Okay.
information to you individually if you're interested.
I would just like to point out that there were 17 different donors who donated almost $17,000 to the district this month. I think that kind of support from the community is worthy of note. So
Yeah, that's fantastic.
thank you to
Yes.
everyone who made contributions. All right, next item, back up, I'm moving on. All right, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda is our second public hearing on the Instructional Time Model program. Rachel, would you like to speak to us?
Public hearing,
Or
Do we have any speakers?
there were none.
no speakers? Okay. And I don't see anyone, I don't know, so.
Wait for
um,
my slideshow.
We will not be needing to hold a public hearing, so we'll just let Rachel tell us about the instructional time model.
Okay. So we will be referring to our instructional time model from here on out as PUSD everywhere, because it's every child, every day, everywhere. So we're going to go over just kind of what it looks like currently right now for this year, and just some of our next steps, but just know that this is, what I'm going to present to you is really focused on this year and our need for having an online option for families. But we will want to do some adjustments in that as we go on, but yeah. So what is an instructional time model? Just to remember, the House Bill 2862 allows us to have flexibility in how we present instructional hours to our students. It can be remotely, it can be through mastery-based, it can be on evenings and weekends, it can be through project-based learning. So just gives us some flexibility in how we are distributing our time to students. And so for this school year, up to 50% of the total instructional hours per school. So not for a single student, but just total. So long as we don't have more than 50% that are 100% online, we will get full funding. It does decrease to 40% after that, but currently the way the law is written is from 22, 23 on, it will be at that 40% mark. So why an ITM versus an AOI? So ITM allows us to have full funding. AOI is only at a 95% funding rate, which is also very difficult to get to because of the next part, which is attendance is measured by days with an ITM, the same way we measure attendance at school. Attendance for an AOI is by the minute, and so we have to keep track of how long a student is online. And if they're not hitting that minutes, then we wouldn't even get that 95% funding for them, we would get 85%. ITM allows students to remain part of their school community, so they are a Granite Mountain student online, they're a Mile High student online, versus having a separate school where they kind of feel isolated and separate from their peers. And ITM allows more easily for hybrid. AOI does allow some hybrid to it, but it wouldn't be as easy and seamless to do as with an ITM, and really the AOI is designed to be online only. And one of the things, I didn't put it in here, but since Adam mentioned it in his, it is something we should probably keep in mind. With an ITM, we can keep the DRP. We are allowed to have both. If you have an AOI, you are not allowed to have a dropout recovery program. No matter what, I do think that that is something that we're going to want to talk about, how we restructure and absorb it into our ITM model, but we are allowed to keep the DRP. And we also learned that we could potentially operate it as an alternative school instead of being within PHS. So that's another thing for later on this year as we continue to kind of research and plug along.
And I'll just point out that attendance by minute was something that goes right back to our conversation with the DRP kids. That's hard on DRP kids. And that's what, when we were making this change, we were pretty worried about how we're going to do that. And then the ITM came along and answered a lot of those questions for us. So we have good options now.
Yeah. So currently, and actually this is one off because I did add a new student today, we have 29 students online. Not a huge influx. I was kind of worried at the last board meeting that I was going to wake up to an inbox full. So it's been a steady trickle. I get about one student a day who is, concerned with quarantines or concerned with some things and want an online option. I had 2 students who had some visa issues after their trip this summer and weren't able to return. And so we put them online for now, and they're back in person. But it was nice to have that flexibility and option for them to still continue their education instead of not doing anything for a month. So you can kind of just see the breakdown there by school. It is a variety of ages. I have 1 kindergartner, I've got 1 senior, and it's just all in between there. So we retaining and adding students. So most of the students enrolled were current PUSD students. 23 of them, of that 28, so not including the one from today, were current PUSD students who were wanting an option. We did have 3 re-enrollments who they had withdrawn because they wanted an online option, and when we had one, they did re-enroll. And we had 2 new to PUSD that enrolled with us specifically to be online. So for this year, we are utilizing schools PLP. It's something that we'll kind of analyze and assess and kind of get a good feel for and decide in the future how we want to operate the ITM long term. But this was a really nice way for us to get started right away because it's a curriculum that we're already utilizing and familiar with. Students work asynchronously, so they're at their own pace. There's not a live meeting like with prep last year. We are able to adjust the courses. So for instance, there's some 7th graders who would have been in algebra, some 8th graders who would be in geometry. We're able to allow for that instead of, just assigning them 7th grade math or 8th grade math. And so if a kid moves ahead and moves through, they can also move on. So there's, the daily expectations for their courses, but if it's something that they're already mastering and they move through it in a quarter, they can move on to the next class. That wouldn't cost us extra, so they are able to go ahead if they're able. And then kids who maybe need a little adjustments, we are able to kind of put it at a lower level for them. And again, so student attendance is measured by work completion throughout the week. So the expectation is 5 days of work completion, and whether that be 5 school days, or if they want to work on Saturday or Sunday and maybe take Monday off because they had a soccer game or they had a doctor's appointment or whatever it is, they're able to have that flexibility so long as they are getting their full assignments for the week done. And then there is some in person. We are requiring that all testing be done in person so we can have accurate data. Had some trouble with that last year in distance learning and learned some lessons. So last week, used the Inspiration Lab upstairs and spent the week testing kiddos. So I've got one more to do tomorrow, but they have some in-person time, and then there's been some synchronous times if they need to meet with me to talk about an assignment they're stuck on, if they need to talk with their teacher that's assigned to them, things like that. So our cost, it costs us $900 per student per semester, and we do have a semester commitment. So when a kid, and that's one of the things I kind of go over with them when they join, the expectation is that they're staying in it for the semester, and they can decide in January or December if they're going to stay in it for January. So we have, that covers four of their core courses. So math, ELA, science, social studies. Their electives are already covered based on our previous agreement with schools PLP. And at the moment, we're good there. If we saw a huge influx, that number might change. But for now, that is fully covered. We do make up the cost of that by their ADM funding. So what we get from those students, from our 29 students, it is enough to cover their tuition and my position. So. In addition to schools PLP, we do also have speech, OT, PT counseling services still being provided. We aren't providing SDI through schools PLP because there isn't a special ed curriculum within schools PLP. So we're sitting down, if a student has an IEP, if they're in a self-contained or they're in resource, we're having IEP meetings, gathering the team together, going over the whole kind of scope of everything and deciding if that really is the best option for that student. But we are able to provide at least their other services through Thera platform, or some of them are meeting via Google Classroom, via Google Meets. And then same for our EL services, we're able to provide those through Google Classroom asynchronously. And so kind of talked about that. Assessments conducted in person, students with IEPs were meeting and discussing best placement. The family still has that option if the team decides really this is not going to meet those IEP goals for the student, we don't recommend it. That parent still can choose PUSD everywhere, but with the understanding that it's going to be a gen ed curriculum, and we'll try to modify as best we can, but it might not fully service that IEP. And then for filling in the gaps, since they're self-paced, it allows them to kind of move through with mastery, and we are able to adjust it down for students who maybe need to fill in some gaps before they're ready for their courses. So our next steps is, hopefully, we approve the ITM today. And then the template is due to ADE by September 30th. We'll continue adding students as needed. And then the next 2 steps is really looking at the future. This was done really quickly in response to a need, but the ultimate goal was to fully launch our online program next year. And I do still want to take some time and research and make sure that we're doing it well. So next steps are kind of creating a committee of stakeholders. I would love to get some parents who, I have a few parents who have done both prep and now this through schools PLP to get some feedback on what they've liked and disliked about both, and really developing what our mission and goal is, and then reviewing to help us pick our best format. Do we like going with a self-paced curriculum? Do we like more of our teacher involvement? For me personally, I do want to see more PUSD teachers being at the forefront of it. I just think that personal connection is what we are missing a bit from our DRP occasionally, and what a lot of AOYs are missing. And I think it's where we could kind of really have a strong program. So, but we'll kind of review and see if that is what we like the best. And so yeah, that is PUSD everywhere, every child, every day, everywhere.
I would like to point out to the board, if you didn't notice it in the board packet, there was the instructional time model template, and I thought that really helped me make sense of it all. And your slides and stuff were great, but sometimes I need to stop and think. And this allowed me to do that. So if you have questions on that, that's a good resource for you to take a look at. It was very nicely done.
Thank you.
Oh, I did want to say something. I took the PLP course for my online credit. For me, I think it was a really good curriculum. For me, it was super to the point, but also had real life examples and applied it to my life. I mean, I took sociology, and it had current events that I could actually apply to life today. It was super updated, and I thought it was super good.
Great.
Thank you, Isabel.
Yeah, I have gotten some good feedback from some of my parents who actually like the asynchronous model a little more, and they've enjoyed the school's PLP. I just really want to make sure we're hitting on that mentoring, checking in piece along with it. So that's.
Yeah, on that note, I just want to reiterate that we talked a lot in creating this about how do we have that PUSD touch where we have our teachers, and so thank you for bringing that up, and that's something we'll all be continuing to talk about and support you with.
Other questions or comments on this?
Are you seeing students, sorry, Sarah.
No, you're good.
You seeing students moving ahead, so say maybe, like you mentioned, they might have a soccer game or their family's looking to go away for a long weekend or something. Are students able to move ahead throughout the week and finish up if they're motivated to and want to?
Yeah, I mean, I had day one when I was telling these kids, I ran an orientation with them, and I walked them through it, and I said, just today, just log on. You don't even have to do any assignments. I just want you to make sure you can log in. And I had a kid who went in and he did the whole next week's classes. So there's no, it's not like it stops them. They can, if they wanted to finish the course in a month and they wanted to work on it every single day for hours, they can. It's really up to them. So
I think that's really important for those students that succeed in this online model. To be able to do that, I think, is so important to allow them, if they're self-motivated, to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment and to build on that. I just really appreciate the way you present this, not just as a response to the current need around COVID-19 and online education, but also looking towards the future. Your example of the students with the visa issues, I think, is wonderful for at least me to hear, because that's not a benefit I would naturally think of. And then I know when we've talked about this before, whether it's athletics or extracurriculars or having to work a job, just that flexibility. And it's something I heard you mention that I would encourage you, because I think it's great, the timeline and sitting down with stakeholders and the future of work for teachers and what teaching might look like, having some online classes and maybe some in-person. So I just wanted to thank you for that. My only clarifying question is just returning to that funding, because it drops from 50 to 40% of students. And I think you said that means they have to be 100% online. And I know we're not particularly worried about that. I'm just bringing it up because I could see a future where especially high school students might
Yeah.
participate in a program like
Adam
this.
and I have talked about that, and that's actually, wasn't listed as one of my steps, but that is one of the steps. It's just not one of the more current ones, is to sit down with advisors and kind of go over what scheduling looks like, what we would mandate for a student who wants hybrid versus online, so that we aren't going over. The nice thing, at least, is that with this model, even if we ended up going over that, it's 95% of that additional 60, or say we got to 55 and we were supposed to be at 40, we're paid 95% of that 15 over instead of the full. So even comparatively to the AOI, we will do better in terms of funding. But it is something, and it's school by school, so for the elementaries, I'm not too worried about that 40%. I am a little concerned at the high school what it will look like, but that's something we'll definitely.
So they would count towards that percentage even if they were doing hybrid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a large number. I mean, you think, Adam, how many kids at the high school?
700.
1,400. I mean, we would, even this year, we would have to be talking 700 kids participating in some way with the ITM. So
Well, and we would have to be talking about 700 kids participating fully.
Right.
And so,
And that 700 would be fully funded.
Yeah.
It's the 700 first kid, that one kid, that the decreased funding would happen.
yeah.
But because it's new, we'll see some changes at the legislative level.
Yeah.
I mean, it's new to Arizona, so if there's glitches, they'll catch them, but I really just love the flexibility about this. I mean, Rachel's got a kiddo that probably is gonna be an Olympic gymnast, or that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Right now, if you wanna be a
2032.
dancer, or, if you're gonna go and put everything you have into that career during high school, you have to leave PUSD and do something else. This would allow you to still be a Badger and an Olympian.
I mean,
And
you
I
could
think-
still go to prom, you can still walk at graduation, that's the,
And intertwining,
The
getting it so
social.
that the social aspect, so even at the elementary school, there are Lincoln Line or a Taylor X Bobcat, and those extracurricular or the PTA nights, getting those students to be able to have that information, be able to go to their school, because they're just learning at, a different location, but they can still participate in all of the events that go on at every level.
And I think you're spot on for looking at teachers as being able to potentially bridge that gap by being present in both forms of learning. It's just how you do that and schedule it. But I think that would certainly be appealing to the next generation of teachers too.
yeah. No, I was worried after last year, I wouldn't have any teachers who would ever want to do online again, but even before we knew about the ITM, I had teachers reaching out saying, I heard about this AOI thing coming up, so there is interest in all parties.
And, I mean, this is all just brainstorming and figuring this out, but back to the DRP issue, I mean, my vision is that we should have a staff member dedicated to DRP students. Even though this is gonna take a lot of that off of that person, but someone who's making sure those kids don't fall through the gaps.
Well, and I think with the ITM, I think some of our DRP kids wouldn't be DRP kids, because I
Right.
think especially those who they needed to drop out because they needed to work. We didn't have an online option for them prior, so that was their only option. So now we have we have more choices for them. So really, that DRP would only be for kids who would be that high
Less
risk
at risk.
population.
And I do believe there's going to be a portion of those kids that they just don't do well in in-person learning. They're more motivated to work on it on their own, and being at school slows them down. And hopefully as this grows and we see more of it, those kids then feel they're not wasting their time at school. They can go home, get this stuff done, really dig into the material and learn and move forward faster. So I think from that point of view, this is just exciting to me to see. We're offering something for more people this way with this option, I think.
I just have one question. At Mile High, they have that, the classes online. Is that the school PLP curriculum?
Are you talking geometry or what?
No, oh, you might not have them anymore.
I don't think they have it anymore.
If they were
Like if they were
failing,
failing behind. and then-
yeah, and then
We
they
had
went to
been-
the other room and they took those classes online, was that the same thing or not?
We're not doing that same format anymore here, but that
Oh, okay.
was, we did use PLP during that time, but
Okay.
without the teacher support piece. I mean, we had a teacher in the classroom that was
Right.
supporting, but it was the same program.
Okay, just to familiarize, because I was looking at the format of the classes, I just wondered if that was the same one. Okay.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the ITM program?
I have to find it.
I've got it.
The
Okay,
green
good.
one.
I move that we approve the instructional time model in order to provide, semester-based remote learning opportunities for PUSD students as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve an instructional time model in order to provide semester-based remote learning opportunities for PUSD students as presented. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Rachel.
Good job, Rachel.
Okay. We are into the study and voting session, so I just need to remind the audience that if you wish to speak to one of these voting items, you must complete and return the form to Sarah. And I currently have 2 people who've requested to speak on item 2, the retroactive raise for PUSD staff. They are Aaron and Hillary. Is there anyone else? Okay. Aaron, you have 2 minutes. Aaron.
I'm blind with my glasses, I know it's weird. Hi, my name is Erin Holloway. I'm a self-contained teacher for students placed in a private placement due to their emotional behavioral disorders. Tonight, I'm speaking as the de facto president of the Prescott Education Association. Prescott Unified School District works like a well-oiled machine. Each part works together consecutively so that we can give our students the best education that we can. But one part is unfairly compensated for their crucial components. Our support staff. Among our support staff, we can include our nurses who are going above and beyond their normal jobs to keep us healthy and open during this pandemic. On top of their usual duties, they are contact tracing, quarantining students, and checking on students who have called in sick. There's our bus aides that help keep our students safe while our bus drivers get them to their destinations. We have paraprofessionals who provide direct services to our most vulnerable populations. And I personally know that I couldn't be an effective teacher without my parapro. She does so much for me. We have behavioral, speech, and occupational therapists who could be making a lot more money if they chose to go to a private company. But they choose to stay with us because they believe in us and our kids. We have counselors and behavioral coaches who are right now having to do more than usual because of the pandemic and the emotional repercussions of the pandemic. There's IT who went out of their way to make online and hybrid learning work last year with little to no warning. And who can forget our administrative assistants? We all know that it's a dirty little secret that our administrative assistants are the know-all, end-all members of our schools. So is it 1 minute or?
Yeah.
You got
Like 20
seconds. Okay, so
Actually, can I decline my time to her? I'm just gonna give it. Can I do that? No? I was actually going to decline anyway. I only signed up because I thought that she was under.
Okay, so we're living at wonky times now. The cost of living is up, and wages for a lot of our local businesses are going up as well as the demand for the quality help. My fear is that if we don't start fairly compensating our team members, that we will lose them to the competition. I ask the board to please vote yes for this increase in wages, and for those decision makers to look for a long-term solution to find more money if that is at all possible.
Thank you, Erin. Hillary?
I don't really have much to add. I did not know that if Erin was going to be able to make it or not, so I just wanted to be on the safe side and sign up. But basically, I'm just going to second everything that she said. For those of you who have worked with paraprofessionals and people, we as teachers know we could not do our jobs effectively without our support staff. And we have had an amazingly high turnover with our paraprofessionals especially. And we've got a lot of open positions right now. We've been really struggling to fill them, and that is because our paraprofessionals can go to Panera and make more. They can go to Starbucks and make more. And for what they are doing for us, for the things that they do every day, I mean, you would not believe what these people do for in our classrooms every day. I believe they deserve more. So I would like to urge you to vote yes.
Thank you. Clark?
It's my turn.
Your turn.
The last time I waited over 2 hours in line for something, it was a really good roller coaster. So I'm kind of hoping this will be fun too.
Is this better or worse?
Well, so far it's at least as good. So well, good. So this board has made a lot of really smart decisions recently. One of the super smart decisions you made recently was in March of 2021, where you chose to move all of our additional compensation that comes under 301 money that hadn't been going directly to teachers already, but had been supporting teachers in terms of instructional coaches and professional development, things like that, move all that to teachers. Effectively, that means that this year, we were really up in the air as far as budget, right? With COVID, no one knew exactly what enrollment would look like. We've had a good streak, kind of a tradition now of raises for teachers and other staff over the years, and that's allowed us to stay competitive. I mentioned earlier, we don't have gaps in our mental health professional positions. There's a reason for that. We've tried to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, and the board's been great about that. At any rate, with making all that money available to our 301 eligible staff, those folks are going to be making about $1,800 more this year and each year going forward. So if you're a teacher who's making $45,000, and my wife's a teacher and I wish she was making $45,000, that's about a 4% raise. For my wife, it'll be significantly more than a 4% raise. If we have a teacher at the top of our pay scale, that'll be maybe a little less than 4% raise, but on average, it's just over 4%. That's fantastic that we're able to come up with a way that didn't anticipate additional enrollment this year to give essentially 4% raises to the key component of our staff, our teachers. As we did that, the board talked about, we're going to need to see what happens with enrollment. We sure hope that when the fannies hit the seats and the money that comes with that is calculated, that we'll have enough money to pay for those that will be able to do something for our non-teaching staff as well, to keep them up. The board has been wise over the years to not choose certain groups of our employees to receive raises and others not to. We've tried to kind of keep those in line with each other. And as it turns out, the enrollment this year was a little bit more than we anticipated. That's been great, and so there is money available for this. So now we're looking at paying folks like Erin talked about, our nurses and our bus drivers and our SPED parapros and our principals and our secretaries who really do, our administrative assistants. It's not dirty, and it's actually not a secret. They run the schools, that's for sure. So we're talking about those folks and adding money for them. So the proposal that's before you is to commit, let's see, what's the total that we had? Brian, help me out with the figure. There it is. Just less than $369,000 for a 4% raise retroactive to the beginning of this year to keep our non-teaching staff in line with our teaching staff in terms of the raise that the teaching staff has effectively received this year. What questions do you have from me?
Any questions? And the money is coming from ADM?
Yeah, it's whenever we do our budget process in February, our proactive budget, we don't have as volatile a year as we had last year when it comes to, and also we look at two things. We look at what our projected enrollment's going to be, and if it's going to be at least the same or hopefully a little bit more, it figures into our decisions, but also our carry forward. And at that time, we didn't know, what our penalty for the 95% distance learning that we were having. So between our enrollment being at least what it was last year, it's actually a little bit more, and our carry forward stayed true to about 3.6 million. Given those two factors, I would have recommended in February for us to have this 4% raise for all staff after the 301 compensation went to the teachers. And we just didn't know where our carry forward was going to land and our enrollment, and we do now.
So this has essentially been budgeted for in one way of looking at it. It's not going to eat into other programs or class sizes or other things that are set for the year.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 4% retroactive raise for all PUSD support staff to complement PUSD teacher raises approved in March 2021. The rest is in parentheses.
You're good.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve a 4% retroactive raise for all PUSD support staff to complement PUSD teacher raises approved in March 2021. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, next item. It's your turn.
Okay. I'll probably defer to you. This is an item to the board last month, and we wanted a little time to look at it a little further. And we'll have to make a decision today, one way or another, just because of timing. But you have a number of options here. You can adopt what ASB did exactly. You can adopt it with your own changes. You can choose not to adopt it. And it ties into the next item too, which is a delegate. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay. I would point out that the information we received from ASBA on their political agenda, the only changes from what they already are doing were the items in red, either added or subtracted from this. As Clark pointed out to me, he recently attended a state,
Convention with the League of Cities and Towns,
Okay,
so all the
thank you.
mayors and city councils and support staff.
And I will tell you that there was a legislative committee that met and went over everything on here. It represented the majority of school districts in the state, and this was what they hammered out in that day-long meeting. I would tell you that we certainly can make comments or not vote for certain parts of it. However, to be really honest, it won't likely make a difference. So, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't honestly look at it and respond the way we choose. So, questions, thoughts?
I guess,
I like some of it and I hate other pieces of it.
Go ahead.
I guess the only question I have is this something ASBA does every year?
Yes.
That we work with them on? And I just the only part, and I agree with every point that they make in here. I just wonder why the organization asks school boards to sign on to it when they can go lobby legislators anytime they want.
Well, it's because they
it seems
represent us. Their
Okay.
job is to represent school boards. So they want input from school boards as a whole,
Mhm.
and then they'll go lobby based on what they think school boards are asking them to lobby for with the legislature.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So I guess the thing I would, because it kind of hit me as like, oh, here's our legislative agenda. Did we have something that we could have provided input to ASBA on that?
Yes.
Okay.
And we brought it up at an
Okay.
earlier board meeting and asked for input on it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, at the time that occurred, we were buried in COVID stuff
Okay.
and didn't really spend too
Yeah.
much time on it. I was a member of the legislative committee. We have a right to send someone,
Okay.
and I would be more than happy to send someone else next year. You know, and while these things were all approved by the committee, they weren't necessarily all 100%, you know, voted for it. But this was what that committee came up with. And we do have input to this, both in terms of making suggestions for things that should go on the agenda and in terms of having someone at the meeting where this is finalized.
Okay.
So,
Okay. That's probably one of those new member orientation things.
Yeah.
could be.
That could be.
Yeah,
could be
and
brought in.
none of us got to take advantage of that in a
Right.
normal way last year.
Yeah,
No, it
exactly.
wasn't a
Exactly.
good year for
Yeah.
that, so.
So,
Questions, comments on the?
I think, I don't know if this is a question or a comment. I know that some of the concerns that were brought up with this are probably political views that may not be best for PUSD, let's say, at least from a general consensus. And so I'm just, by adopting this, we're not necessarily like changing anything about PUSD. Like, I know the housing,
Oh,
there was concern that was brought up about like providing affordable housing. How would we do that as a district?
It's,
And similar with like the voter registration, it's like, well, what does that, how would that affect here? But ultimately, it's just a platform for
yeah,
the board association, and then any changes that would happen here on a local level would have to come through the board and leadership anyway.
and,
Is
and
that
I would,
correct?
I would mention that, for example, the one that says give all districts the authority to provide affordable housing options to
Right.
teachers. That doesn't mean we have to do it.
right.
It just means if we would choose to go that route, it would be, they would be working for the legal ability to do that if we decided we wanted to.
And so by adopting this, we're giving other school boards the opportunity to go that route if that's a
Yeah,
priority.
and we don't have to take on any of these.
But this is what ASBA will lobby the
Lobby
legislature for.
Right.
This
Yes.
isn't necessarily a directive.
Doesn't mean anybody's
No.
gonna listen to them.
No.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
And honestly,
Right.
you know,
Okay.
I
Just
can't
speaking
imagine
from
that they
experience.
would put maximum lobbying effort into every one of these
Right.
items. That's a pretty
Okay.
extensive list. But what happens, this legislative committee meeting all day, every school has their specific items that they want included. The rural schools have particularly been a vociferous group in their asking for lobbying for various things because they've been on the short end of a lot of
Right.
things.
Yeah.
So
just
that's where a
about-
lot of stuff in it comes from, so. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the political agenda from the ASBA?
I would move that, what would the motion be? I would move that we approve the Arizona School Boards Association Draft 2022 Political Agenda and direct the district's delegate to the ASBA Assembly to represent the board's determined position.
All right.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Arizona School Boards Association Draft 2022 Political Agenda and direct the district's delegate to the ASBA Delegate Assembly to represent the board's determined position. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay. Motion passes. Now, the issue is that the delegate assembly is this Saturday, and it will be in Phoenix. And we are not required to send a delegate, but we have the opportunity to do so. And I cannot serve because I was on the committee,
I will be out of town.
so.
What is the duty of this person?
To cast our vote based on what we just decided here at this delegate
That
assembly.
makes me probably not the best person to go.
You're out of town too.
Yeah, I mean, I would
That's
not.
fair.
I
That's
would
fair.
not want to pressure you into that position.
If we don't send a delegate, there will be hundreds of others and
Yes.
it'll be okay.
And, you know, if no one is,
Is there debate going on, or are we, no, we have voted as a board to approve this.
we
so,
have to support
yeah.
what the board votes.
Yeah, nope,
So,
I'm not going.
okay.
Thank you.
I would be happy to go if I wasn't gone, previously committed. I mean,
Well, and we can watch how this works, and next
Yeah.
year, it's a different
You know,
story.
We,
Yeah.
we
And,
know.
you know, we could give input earlier next year also, and
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that next year we will, I felt like we suddenly had to make this decision this year, and as far as what items we might like in this, and we just didn't have the time when it happened, so I will hope we can do a
Can we-
better.
can we
Yeah.
proxy? Could somebody be another?
I don't
Delegate
believe we
proxy.
can.
I think it has to
And
be a board member.
honestly, I don't think we'll
Okay.
So, all right. Next item is, I'm going to skip item 4 then, since we are not designating a delegate.
Or it dies due to the lack of a motion or a second,
Yeah, no
basically.
motion. Okay. Number 5, consider delegating the authorizing power to principals with regards to approving student activity fund club fundraisers as presented. Brian, why are we doing this?
You know, the Auditor General has ever-flowing changes to what they require. So our auditors came in August, and one of the things they shared was a new requirement that our student clubs, our student activities, whenever they have fundraisers, whether that's a restaurant night where teachers go and you know, serve kids, or selling candy bars, or any legal fundraiser that's student activities, you now either have to have every single one of those come to the board as a vote before the fundraiser happens, or you can delegate that authorizing power to the principal, and then there's a form that they go through and they approve with permission of the board to have those fundraisers happen. So it will be one of those yearly votes that we will do in June, but it was just became known that this is something we need to do.
And how has it been done up to this point?
Principals have approved. It's just now that they are saying, student activities, we are stewards of their money.
Yes.
And so another level of making it formal, I guess is the best word, is to have a form that the principals fill out, signing, the student representative would sign, the sponsoring teacher of that student club would sign, the principal would sign, and minutes of the student club saying we're going to do this would be included in that package. And every one of those could come to the board, or we could delegate the authority to the principals, and they had done it in the past. It's not in a formal manner.
Questions, comments?
How many fundraisers generally happen in any given year?
More than you'd think.
Like-
The auditors came and they randomly sampled 5 different deposits from our student clubs, and out of the 5, 4 were fundraisers, and that was during COVID year. So I think at the high school, you're talking, I couldn't even tell you.
It's tough to judge.
30
We
a
have so many
year?
clubs and
Yeah.
student activities and.
It would be as simple as that at elementary school, you do candygrams at Valentine's time. That's a fundraiser. You are providing a product or a service for money. It's a fundraiser. And if it goes through student activities, it has to be approved by the board, or the board votes to pass this to the principals, and then they do the form.
I think if we made it come through the board, it would just bog down everything. We wouldn't have any fundraisers.
It would be
'cause we would only
detrimental
come every,
to the
we only meet once
timing.
a month.
That's pretty far in the weeds.
It is very weedy, and it'd be surprised how many times the students meet and say, this would be a great idea for Valentine's next week.
Yeah.
And then we'd say, I'm sorry, but the next board meeting is in March. Bring it to the board for the next year. And that wouldn't be nice for the kids.
So I make a motion to delegate the authorizing power to principals with regards to approving student activity club fundraisers as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we delegate the authorizing power to principals with regards to approving student activity club fundraisers as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Number 6 is Clark's going to talk to us about an increase for IT wages.
You want me to speak to that first?
Yeah.
Well, your name is on it. so.
Could you ask us if we have any questions first? Maybe we could just make a motion.
We could go that direction if you'd like, but
I've gotta get up early.
I've got a nifty chart that I've got for you as well. I'll try to be brief.
We
So,
still have a quorum if you need to leave.
I guess that's true too. At any rate, I presented to you some information about salary comparisons a month or two ago, and one of the things that we saw from that was our IT techs, in terms of their starting wages, at the lower end of our scale, upper end of the scale, compare pretty favorably. You can see right here. You compare pretty favorably to neighboring districts, but not to other local employers. And we have great IT folks, and we'll often get them for a bit of time, and then they'll move on to other, they'll move on to Yavapai Regional Medical Center, or to Yavapai College, or to Yavapai County, or City of Prescott, something like that. As we've talked with those folks, a lot of times they cite the opportunities elsewhere to make more money when they leave. It's not that they don't love being here, it's not that they don't love working for Steve, and it's not that they don't love working with kids and what they do, but we're just not keeping up with those salary scales. So what the district administrative team is proposing to you is a 6% increase in our starting salary scale. That would be inclusive of the 4% that you just approved for all non-teaching staff. So not 10% altogether, but 6% altogether is reflected in this chart here. And then do something for our IT staff that we do for several other job categories in PUSD, which is to recognize experience when they come in. We've not been doing that. So if someone is just fresh off the turnip truck and has IT skills, we'll put them at $13.74 an hour, I think it is, something like, yeah, $15.74 an hour, excuse me. And if they've got several years of experience, then they're going to be a starting IT tech, same thing. So we've been getting folks, and as soon as they get a couple of years experience, they realize I can do this across the street for way more money. I got, we get a little something from Tim Carter every day that's an update from YCESA. And there's quotes in it. There's a quote today that said, there are two fools in every market. One asks too much and the other asks too little. So that's a quote from Antiquity. And I would piggyback on that and share with you my own version of that quote. There are two types of foolish employers in every job market. One pays too much and the other pays too little. And I think we're in that category as far as our IT folks, that second category of paying too little. So you can see from the chart here, where we've come up with figures that we feel will make us competitive. We're just about in line with our other employers, and I'm happy to answer any questions about this. I know Carl's got tons of questions, but if the rest of you have questions as well, happy to answer any of those. But the idea here is that we'll be able to retain and attract, when the time comes, these skilled employees that are really crucial to student success and teacher success and the other key district functions. So what questions do you have for me about what you've had presented to you as far as figures, other things?
Any questions, comments? I think we're just gonna keep losing them, bleeding them if we don't do this.
And we're hopeful that we've come up with a structure that will ameliorate that.
And I know Stephen's here, and he wanted to possibly speak to it. I don't know if your piece has been covered by Mr. Tenney, but short and sweet, if you will, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
I'll keep it short and sweet, guys. So thank you for having me here today. I just want you to encourage my statement as a consideration when reviewing the proposed pay scale. My department has faced a lot of challenges over the last 5 school years that I've been with the district. And over those last 5 years, my mission has been to find and create a stellar team that's comprised of what I believe is probably the best of the best that we've ever had in this district. I've attracted candidates all the way from Phoenix and beyond to our district. And over the past few years, it's been a struggle to retain those qualified individuals. Starting pay has always been the #1 topic when I hire new employees, and as Clark had said, it doesn't matter if you had a single year of experience or 20 years of experience in the field. We just don't recognize that in our current pay scale. Currently, I have one open position for an IT technician, and honestly, I'm kind of concerned because of the pay scale. The person that's vacating this position was hired April of this year. And they've made incredible contributions to the district thus far, and they are choosing now to leave for an employer that's offering twice the pay. So with each person that we lose, not only do we have to increase our workload as a department and overflow those duties to other employees within the department, we also lose the working knowledge of these individuals that leave the district. These are people that help contribute to my mission to the district to provide the best possible technology services for teachers and for students. Each person that leaves this district is knowledge loss that we have to then go out and try to retain. This position that I'm currently losing was open for 3 months before I got a qualified candidate for the position. I'm going on 2 weeks with this position open right now, and I have 0 qualified applicants. So this is an issue. After 5 years of being a director in this position, I've lost 9 people in this department. Compared to the years prior, this is a drop in the bucket. 6 of those left for local Yavapai County employers, making almost as much, if not more, than I made as a director. The 2 of them moved out of the area for better opportunities for 2 to 3 times the pay, and 1 of them left after just 2 weeks to be a customer service rep making 50 cents more an hour. So the proposed increase, while it's not a magic wand to create qualified applicants, it will help bridge the gap that PUSD has with other local employers, not just our peers in other school districts, but I'm talking Embry-Riddle, I'm talking the city of Prescott, I'm talking Yavapai County, the hospital, countless other smaller employers that pay 30 to 50% more than we do. The biggest thing is PUSD needs to be, we need to stop being a trading ground for skilled people. We need to be a leader for skilled people. And that's what I do is my job is to develop these people in not just IT skills. They acquire customer service skills, people skills, things that other employers find as an attractive piece that current IT employees might not have coming into the market. So they're using us as a poaching ground. So again, I ask, let's make Prescott a leader for skilled labor. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Any questions or comments? Anyone like to make a motion?
to approve a 6% increase to the information technology tech wage scale as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve a 6% increase to the information technology tech wage scale as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. We now have another person who would like to speak to us on the next item on approving designated substitute teachers at each school. So, Carl?
Okay, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Carl Salaji. I'm a sixth grade math and science teacher at Granite Mountain Middle School.
2 minutes, Carl.
And I just wanted to confirm this proposal to get permanent substitutes at each school. I actually subbed in Yavapai County before I was hired last spring. And I was actually hired to be a 7th and 8th grade math support teacher at Mile High Middle. And I mainly did that, but I would have to say, truthfully, in the last month, I was more of a substitute because they just couldn't find enough substitutes. I can tell you just since the beginning of the year, many of my teachers, our colleagues, and myself, at times we've had to substitute during our prep period, and other times because there's not enough substitutes. They can't fill the positions. And so, this takes away from a lot of your time when you need to prepare lessons and grade and all that. So I'm really happy to see this proposal. Just here to affirm that, support it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
We need them.
Any, go ahead.
Sarah, you have that.
I do.
Carl did a great job just kind of nailing this. The pandemic has hit us kind of in two ways with this. We need subs more than ever, and there are fewer subs than ever. So this is not the silver bullet for that. I'm not positive that if the board approves this 8 positions, that we're going to have 8 people lining up at our door tomorrow morning and saying, yeah, I want to do that. But the approval for this will allow us to move forward, and it will mitigate an issue that really is becoming critical. Teachers are having to give up their preparation time to be well prepared for afternoon classes in order to cover for the guy across the hall who's out sick that day because he doesn't want to spread COVID, et cetera. So it really is a pretty important thing. The good news is typically if you were to say, yeah, let's add 8 full-time positions to the district, you'd be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because we would be hiring substitutes anyway for these positions to the extent that we can get them, the impact of that is mitigated substantially. We have 200, you can see here just really quickly, 263 sub-eligible positions that each day might need coverage. And daily we request about 21, and we usually have about 10 or 11 of those filled, and so that 10 go unfilled. And we're hopeful to take a pretty good bite out of that by having some permanent folks at each of the schools. Questions?
How are these paid? Are they paid the daily sub rate?
Yes, so the
Benefit
proposal
eligible?
is we usually go through a third party
Right.
for our subs, and these would be PUSD employees, and they would be paid the same daily sub rate. There
Okay.
would be health benefits with it, so hopefully that's a draw from
Okay.
either the pool or qualified folks that have a subbing certificate. But they would be, at daily, the disposal of the principal to have them shift into vacant rooms, and we would be paying this out of ESSER money.
So they'll be posted at a site and expected to be there every day?
Yes.
Regardless of whether there's a sub needed that day?
Correct.
Okay.
Like you said, Clark, there may not be people lining up for those
Mhm.
positions right now. I'm curious, are we able to compensate teachers who pick up those extra shifts as subs?
That's a great
as
question.
another mitigation strategy?
Super question. That's something we're looking at as a district administrative team to make some changes into what many other districts do to compensate folks for the time that we're looking at there. So that's something that may come before the board next month. Yeah, great question.
So we're thinking maybe try this, see how that goes.
We're thinking kind of a three-pronged approach. One is this, one is what you've just mentioned, Sarah. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. And then the third is raising the daily rate that substitutes get paid. So all three of those things.
Okay, Brian, so this sub is here for a significant amount of time. Would they ever shift to long-term sub pay? Or
They start
would it
at
just
long-term
be daily?
They would be starting at what they would receive through ESI as long-term sub.
As long-term sub,
Correct.
okay.
Great question.
Thank you.
And it really is, as much as we hope that we get our positions filled through
Yeah.
ESI, there will be this person that would be filling a need. And even with that, we still would have to have, most of the time, teachers covering. So we would be looking at a compensation piece if they're giving up their preparatory period that we'd be bringing to you in the future.
I worry too about the extra stress on our teachers.
For sure.
When we require them to take other classes.
And you don't know until the morning of.
No,
So you get, as a principal, you get to school, 7:30, you find out you have 3 vacant, and then you're scrambling, you're either canceling intervention groups, you're pleading with teachers to cover, having paraprofessionals, or having specials canceled at the elementary or middle school levels.
Is it possible to do any of that retroactively as well? Because I know this takes time, and the more time ticks, the more teachers are being pulled from what they're.
There's, will be, when it comes to that compensation on a teacher covering during their prep, we're going to be looking at it at multiple levels. One of the things we have to make sure we're doing is not having gift of public funds and record recording of the times is going to be an essential piece. I don't know if we would be able to do it retroactively because we haven't had the mechanism. And even having one person paid when they shouldn't could be bad.
It's a complex payroll situation
Oh,
for one.
But it's great you're thinking in terms of what else can we do. And again, there's
absolutely.
3 partial solutions to this problem that we've got going, and one of them is coming before you tonight. Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. Any other questions? All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve the designated substitute teachers at each school for the remainder of the 21-22 school year as presented.
Second. Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve designated substitute teachers at each school for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Are you going to do the
Yep.
next item on
Yep.
the VISTA?
This is a proposal for a new VISTA position. Remember, VISTA positions are full-time positions that we get for $20,000. Well, this one came to us as a proposal to share with the city of Prescott. And so this would cost PUSD $5,000 for a full-time position. The other 5 comes from Arizona Community Foundation, and 10 would come from the city of Prescott. City of Prescott owns the Community Nature Center. We have an incredible partnership with them over there. We used to own that. We sold it to the city. They've created programs during COVID that are servicing tons of students, and 90% of them are PUSD students. And so this is a person who will work with our staff and will work with the Nature Center staff to build lessons and tie STEM in and to support teachers at Granite Mountain and any of our other schools that want to participate, specifically at Bayou-Judd, because they're all right there connected with the trail now. And so this is it's a neat proposal. It's a great partnership.
Questions?
You mentioned it's new. I know there's already several VISTA positions that are operating out of the CNC. What distinguishes this new position from what is currently happening?
I don't know that those are our VISTAs. Well, we have a farm to school VISTA, and we have a student success coordinator. So that's what PUSD is paying for through VISTA. Now, the city may have also taken advantage of vistas over there, so I'm not exactly sure what they're doing over there, but I can tell you those programs, as you know, are robust, and that staff over there is just hand in hand with our staff, providing time for kids to, one, be outside, which is great right now, and two, just to really tie our curriculum into being outside right there next to their school. I don't know if that answered your question, but
I'm just wondering what it expands on
yeah.
that currently is not already in existence.
I believe that the Vista is currently already in existence, and it was started within this year. This is formalizing with the board's approval, something that was agreed upon in the past that we would cost share this Vista. And so...
so it's a ratification piece?
Yes.
So it's not necessarily new, it's just continuing. Okay.
It's new to this board, it wasn't.
Correct.
We did this in May with the other two positions, so this would be adding that third.
Questions?
For 0.5.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve the Vista position for the 21-22 school year as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we consider, or that we approve the Vista position for the 21-22 school year as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, we're down to the information and discussion items. Brian, the school board summary budget.
As presented.
Thank you, sir.
I actually got to say that at the come on.
There goes the new high school principal.
I'm not even going to say what I was going to say because that just ruined it.
All right.
Okay.
And the enrollment.
Yeah, we just wanted to touch on it if it didn't come up with the 4% voting item. Just that, this year we are up from last year, which helped with, the 4% raise decision. Ultimately, just for folks that may not know, new governing board members or the audience, the number of kids we have, the head count at schools, only directly correlates to the funding if they're with us for the first 100 days. Within the first 100 days, every day a student is with us is worth 1% of the funding that we receive. If a student enrolls on the 101st day, we do not see any funding for that student until the next year if they stay with PUSD. And so the good news is, compared to last year, we are up. Head count, now how that will translate into ADM, we won't know until after the 100th day. But it is good that we are, we haven't decreased enrollment from last year, and that helped play in the decision for the 4% raise.
Any questions for Brian? All right. ESSER funds.
Just a little bit of an update. Principals are having their site council meetings. I think 3 out of the 6 have, just wait, how many are there? 6, have passed their site council minutes with ideas and brainstorms for spending the ESSER money, which is really a lot of what has already been discussed. Technology, site improvements. Principals continue to fill out their capital plan that we can. Some of them have made it really pretty and well thought out and got input from their employees. Some have to find time to do that. We really have used the ESSER funds to have positions that are needed in this time right now. The sub at every site that you just approved will come out of ESSER money. The distance learning, Rachel has hired 2 employees that are going to help bridge the gap between school and home if students are needing to be quarantined or isolated. Our social emotional director health and safety coordinator. All of those positions are being funded by the ESSER, which we wouldn't have been able to do without having that federal money. So really just an update on the positions, and we're continuing to get feedback from stakeholders.
Okay. Questions? All right. Alexa.
Hello. So I have a couple things that I wanted to just mention quickly. So metrics-wise, we're still pretty high in high transmission. Last week, we're at 306 cases per 100,000. Just as a reminder, to get into the high category, you need to be at 100. So we're well above that. Additionally, our percent positivity is still around 14%. So COVID is very prevalent in our community, so just take precautions to keep yourself safe and healthy. Our dashboard that is linked on our prescottschools.com under the COVID information, that's updated once or twice a week. So our last update was on Thursday. We had 44 active cases district-wide, so that means there's 44 students and staff at home isolating. We had 147 resolved cases, so that means we've had 147 students and staff in the first month of school test positive for COVID. That's well above our cumulative total for the last school year. So we're seeing it way more in our schools than we were last year. And then we had 172 students and staff currently quarantined at home. So those are the students who are identified as close contacts at school and that are required to quarantine. We are offering testing now 3 days a week at Mile High Middle School. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays and Wednesdays is 3:30 to 4:30, so after school in the parking lot, and then Fridays is 8 to 9 in the morning, also in the parking lot at Mile High. We've had great reception to that. Our testing event that happened last Monday, we had 95 folks tested. Wednesday was a little bit different because we had our first rainy day testing event, so we had to move into the cafeteria, so it wasn't quite as popular as Monday. And then we hosted one today. Since yesterday was a holiday, we wanted to make sure that we kind of made up for that, so we'll be testing again tomorrow and Friday. That's been really helpful for families who are quarantined, because if you get tested on day 6 or 7 of quarantine, you can return to school on day 8. So that's a free service that we're offering to families in a great partnership with the county health department. They've been huge in supporting that effort. So that's available to PUSD students, staff, and families if they want to come and get tested because they're feeling a little sick or just worried or want to get exempted from quarantine and can return to school. That's available. So please use it. We're happy to provide that. And then lastly, Brian just mentioned our student support liaisons. We had 2 folks join us this morning. So they've started today, and we started the onboarding process, Rachel and I, with them. So they'll be helping students academically if they're quarantined. So they'll be checking in with them, making sure that they have Chromebooks or a hotspot if they need one, making sure that they're getting free lunch if that's something they need, just making sure that their family understands how to log into Google Classroom, and help communicate with teachers to make sure that they're able to stay up on work as much as possible before they return to school. So those are the kind of quick updates I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? I would really appreciate it next month if we could get a presentation on all of the interventions that we are providing during this process.
Absolutely. And we are updating our health and safety website pretty regularly, so if families have questions about our health and safety plan or questions about quarantine, all of that is available, and that's linked on the under the COVID-19 information link on our website. So, and I'm available for families if they have questions. You know, I'm happy to help explain. I know it can be complicated, and if you're not living and breathing it every day, it can seem arbitrary and like weird guidelines. So we're happy to help explain that to families if they have questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Alexa. All right, we have a whole slew of policy advisories.
And it's first read, so what I would recommend is if you have questions as you look that over in the next month, we'll bring it back August 5th. It'll be a voting item. There are a couple things that Marty will point out at that point, at that time. There might be a couple decisions that we need to make within those. But take a look at those and let us know if you have questions. If you have any right now, we can give it a shot.
Are these all the policies that would be changed in our district policy manual?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So-
Yeah, so these are a result of the legislative changes, mostly. But you'll see these 5, 6, sometimes 7 times a year, just based on, there's a team of attorneys down at ASBA that are always reviewing, and they'll bring them our way. And as a board, you can tweak them and make them specifically Prescott, or you can take them as is, and there's goods and bads to both of those choices. But there are times where we need to put some of our own input into them, or even make decisions within those policies.
Okay, next item is our board goals. I told you that I would take them and try to make some sense out of all that we said at our retreat. I didn't do it. Sarah and Joe did it, so I need to give them credit for that. I was so disappointed. Basically, what I'd like you to take a look at this point is the action. We went down to 2 goals, combined everything we'd gotten to into 2 goals. And what I'd like you to do right now is to take a look at the action plans for the 2 goals. We do need to vote, or I would like us to vote on the goals themselves. But before we do that, I'd like to get your responses to the action plans that are on there.
Just a quick comment, thank you so much for just reducing it to 2.
On the first goal, there were a couple things that I would adjust on there, where it says new member visits to each site. I would add with the superintendent on that. I think it just goes smoother for a first visit if they go with you. And then under, this was something that I listened to us talking about getting to know each other and so on. And so this next, the one below that was something I suggested, that board members meet in pairs informally to get to know each other, whether you go out for coffee or whatever. But I would add in parentheses, do not discuss board business with that. But, we talked about opportunities to get to know each other, and if we go in pairs, that works. We could do that.
And you could talk in general about board business, but not about something.
Specific items.
Not like lobbying for, aligning on a board item or something that could be on an agenda in the future typically.
Likewise, at the bottom of that, we soft post a lot of district events, things that are going on. There are a couple of events coming up where we're invited to attend. We can attend and we can visit with each other there. Again, not about board business, but we can still visit. So there is a fairly full list of possible items to get to know each other and on board and so on. Anybody have any other ideas for this one?
I'm gonna just zoom to the new member visits to each site. If you're proposing to add the superintendent, I think that's fine. I think it's also, I certainly wouldn't want, it's a lot of site visits if there's a site change, so maybe like district leadership, and maybe 2 birds, 1 stone. It's like that's a way to do the site visit, but also meet with other folks that help make all this happen.
And, that wouldn't have to be all at one time.
Right.
And be spread out, like 1 a month or something, too. The second goal, the action plans on that one. What I added to that one basically was the item that says casual parking lot visits for the board, administration, and public. And I would say maybe twice a year, whatever, and I chose the term parking lot visits just to kind of give a sense that it would be informal. And we're just there to talk to the public and to get feedback and visit with people and get ideas and so forth. It would not be a formal board meeting. We've talked about liaison work and so forth. What I'd like to do, this is not in the voting portion of our agenda, so we can't vote on the goals tonight anyway. You have these now. If you would take a look at them between now and next month, I would like to vote on them, and if you have other suggestions or changes you'd like to see made in this, we can do that next month. Does that sound reasonable? Okay.
I think the parking lot visits are, I see the concept, I see the value, and I'm aware that prior to this meeting, we're still only attracting people that are not working, because the workday generally ends for most people 4 to 5.
Yep.
And so I'm just wondering if there are options to explore other venues to have that casual, like, we're all gonna be here just to talk, whether it's, I don't know, sports or something. Not to muddle those worlds.
None of this is in stone at this point, so, yeah, bring those ideas, Sarah. All right.
Food might help.
Food never hurts.
Food might help attract.
So, anybody have future agenda items they'd like to bring up? Okay, our next meeting will be held on October 5th, and that one will be at Prescott High School, so in the Ruth Street Theater.
And I'll be gone.
We'll miss you.
I know.
All right. I will be attending the law conference this week. I'm leaving 5:30 tomorrow morning, so you and I can get up together. I know, you're up before that.
She's got 5 hours of donuts in before that.
I expect, so. Okay. And then fall break is the 11th to the 15th of October. Unless someone has something else to say. Girls, did you have anything you'd like to share with us?
Not particularly, no.
Okay, well, I just like to give you your opportunity.
Thank you, girls.
Yes, okay, we're adjourned.